Welcome back to State of the Apps.
State of the Apps 2025.
So every year on State of the Apps, we talk about the tools, the services, the apps that we use to manage our work and our lives. This year, we're changing from tradition. We usually discuss our home screens to start off State of the Apps. Last year, that lasted about 4 hours. So this year, we're swapping it around. We're going to talk about the apps first, then talk about our home screens second. Because otherwise we just talk about all the apps twice. So we're going to talk about our applications first, and then we're going to share off our home screens together too.
Luckily, iOS hasn't made any home screen relevant changes this year. There's no additional customization options or anything like that. So we're just going to start off straight with the apps.
So start off with the cornerstone category, which is productivity. And the base of all productivity systems is the to-do apps that we use. I'll say for me, I don't really have any significant change here, and I am actually more interested to learn about what you're doing. So I'm going to run through mine real quick.
Mm-hmm.
So I am using a variety of apps in productivity and in my to-do management. So I use Todoist, which is for all of my personal and professional tasks. Todoist is just the tasks that are just for me. I don't share anything in Todoist. It has those features, but it's not what I'm looking for, and I keep my task management very simple. Everything has a due date. Everything has a project that it's assigned to, and I just keep that very simply. I use reminders for family tasks. These are shared between me and my wife. This has been great. We started using reminders this year. We were using Trello before, and I didn't like using Trello for this. But last year, Apple brought like a column view to reminders, and we were able to move over to that. And that has been much better for the both of us.
Can one person use it in the column view and one person use it in the list view if you're sharing, or do you both have to have it the same way?
Yes, you can choose. It's just the way it lays out the same information.
Okay.
It's like, for example, I have it columns on my iPad and list view on my iPhone.
Okay.
Because that is easier for me. And we're just very good at doing just assign tasks to each other. It has an assigning function. Reminders is getting pretty good. I couldn't use it as my task manager because I just feel like some things require too many taps.
Mm-hmm.
Even the natural language stuff, it'll understand it, but it still requires a little bit of poking to get it to do what you want with certain due dates and stuff. But for a family task system, I'm very happy with it.
Yeah, Reminders is perfect for that. Like, it's clearly gotten better over the years. So, like, it's inching closer to being something that could be a main person's to-do app. But I use it for the same thing as like family shared stuff, and you basically can't beat it for that. It's the best for shared lists.
I think if you've never used a task management system before, Reminders would be perfect. I think it's difficult if you're moving from something else.
Yeah.
If it's just for a solo individual. And, like any shared reminder system, neither me or Adina is exactly happy with the way that Reminders works because we both have our own ways of wanting to manage things, right? And so like that is kind of the issue there. But I think this is much better overall than Trello was for this. I still use Things for large, repeatable checklists with templates. So I really like Things as a checklist app. It would not work for me still as my main to-do app because of some of the ways it handles repeating tasks, which is, at this point, just feels like something that they cannot or just will not change. The main thing is if you have a repeating task, you cannot mark it as completed until the day that it's set, even if you've done it sooner.
Oh, right. Yes. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I just don't want to live my life that way. Like sometimes I like to do things sooner, and I don't want the to-do manager to just completely control my life that way. But Things is wonderful for me for checklists. So I have templates that are made in shortcuts. I have really great shortcuts support to basically just run a shortcut. It duplicates like an archived project, essentially, that you can kind of just set up projects however you want, and it duplicates it and turns it into an active project. And I have that for Cortex because there's lots of steps to posting this show. And I keep my travel checklists and stuff like that in my packing lists, all in Things too. And I really like it for that kind of stuff. I'm still using Due. I can't imagine not using this application. Due for me is for it's just personal stuff that is too simple to go in Todoist, but things that I want to remember, like take medication, take out the trash, call your mom, that kind of stuff. And what I also like about putting tasks into Due is the thing that it does so well, it will just keep reminding you until it's done. And I really like that about it. I'm still using Timery for time tracking, continue to do my time tracking every day, and Apple Notes for all my notes, except Cortex in general. Nothing for Cortex, podcast or brand, goes into notes anymore, which is new, and I'm going to talk about that a little bit later on in the show. But essentially, the foundation of my productivity system has remained the same with some pleasant changes, like in moving through reminders and stuff like that.
It feels like you have it nicely delineated what's for what. It feels like you've got the good separation there for what kind of task goes in what place. Yeah.
It works really well for me. I know on the face of it, it seems kind of absurd. I use like 4 different to-do apps, but I really don't like to mix certain types of tasks together. It doesn't work for my brain. I like there to be as little in Todoist as possible. And if I collapsed all of this stuff into Todoist, it would not be good for my mental stability. Like if all of these things are in Todoist, it would like double my task list, and that would not feel good. So I like having them separated this way. I also don't want to share my main task list with anyone. I don't want anyone to ever put things in there, and I don't want to see anything that's related to anybody else. So when we spoke last year, OmniFocus 4 was not out. And you've been an OmniFocus user forever, essentially. OmniFocus 4 is now out. I'm wondering what your productivity system is looking like today.
Yeah, so I was quite concerned and quite in the wilderness last year because OmniFocus, the thing that I've always said, it has this killer feature, several killer features, but the main thing for me is the concept of defer dates, dates before which you cannot start a task, and so those tasks are hidden from you until that date arrives. I say it every year. It's just insane to me that this is not a part of every task manager ever, but very few task managers do it. It's always been the killer feature for OmniFocus. But yeah, it was getting quite rickety and concerning with them not updating the new version. And then OmniFocus 4 did come out this year. They had a little bit of a teething problem when it first arrived, and I was still quite worried. But at this point, I'm very happy with OmniFocus. Like they have smoothed out all of the initial launch problems, and I do see like, oh, okay, like they're making changes, they're improving features, they're adding some new stuff. I think like a lot of companies were going through this old like C++ to Swift transition, and like they just got caught in that middle ground really bad. But now that they're here, it feels like, oh, okay, it's back on track. I'm very happy with it. And the thing that I've been doing with OmniFocus this year, which is just great, is I actually have a kind of watch-based productivity system now because of the way that OmniFocus works, where I'm almost always using a watch face that has like the big complication so I can see 2 to-do items from OmniFocus. I've kind of reworked my whole system around, I'm kind of like running through a checklist of the day, trying to go through like what are the 2 things that are at the very top of the list and just like checking them off on my watch as I'm going through stuff. And I just really like this. It's a kind of funny way to use a hugely powerful and complicated to-do manager. But the purpose of that is to use all of that complication and their ability to sort and have very complicated repeating functions, different priorities for tasks, and then have that just show up as, at any particular moment, you should be doing one of these 2 things that you just see on your watch. And when you do it, you just check it off and then move on to the next thing. And I've repeated that with like widgets on my iPad and on my computer. So I'm kind of always seeing like the top 2 things. And I'm really just loving this as a system. Like it's really fantastic.
So the top 2 things thing, is this like a complication on the watch face?
It's a complication on the watch face.
The middle one.
That wide complication, yeah. Not the super wide one, but it's like the big one. So I'm mostly using watch faces when I'm working that have that. Like on the Ultra, right? You can have like the big complication in the middle. That's what I'm using a lot.
Okay, so it's like not in the app as such, but it's that they're always viewable to you, and then you would open the app to check them off?
Yeah, so when you tap it, it opens the app, and then I can check them off as I'm going through there on the watch. And I don't know, this is just one of these things. Sometimes you find a really good rhythm.
Yeah.
This is the thing with the to-do apps always, right? To-do apps aren't the work. They're the representation of the work. But it's very easy to get caught in a kind of managing the tasks mode, which is always just frustrating. And so this is kind of a nice way where I really never have to have the actual OmniFocus app open anymore. I'm almost entirely interacting with it through widgets, mainly on my watch, sometimes on the phone or iPad or computer, but I'm basically never using the app. And I feel like this is partly possible because of a lot of the back-end improvements they made in the upgrade to OmniFocus 4. And like it syncs very well. I could not be happier with this way of running through like, what am I going to do every day?
Are you doing anything to your tasks to try and get the right to be at the top?
So yes, that's just a result of a lot of the other thing that OmniFocus has as the main feature for me, which is their perspective system,
Right.
which is really just a system that allows you to have very complicated logical statements about which tasks do you want to appear in this list.
Is that the same as contexts in the GTD parlance?
No, just forget that at all. Like, this was great for the Middle Ages before we had computers, but now that everything's a computer, like GTD is just completely unhelpful. What I mean by this is the perspective allows you to say, the tasks that I want to appear in this list should only appear if they're on this list and they're tagged with that, but not this, and also this, but excluding here. And if it has this property and the note field is blank, or the note field contains just this word. They allow you basically arbitrary complexity with nested if-then statements, which is just really powerful. Like, like Reminders smart lists, they let you set filters, but you have a very limited number of things you can do with those filters. The perspectives is, you can have as many filters, they can be nested, and the nesting is really what makes it quite powerful. In addition, OmniFocus has the concept of just show me the top thing that's available from a list. So you can also do complicated interactions like, make me a list that's composed of these other lists, but only show me the top item from each of those lists. So what is it that I'm trying to achieve, right? The thing that I'm trying to achieve with a task manager, and why I'm so fussy about defer dates in particular and these kinds of sorting abilities, is because the core thing to me that a task manager from heaven should do is it should only show you exactly the thing that you can and should be doing right now. And you shouldn't be able to see things that you can't do. And I also feel like you shouldn't be seeing lots of things that you're not currently doing. So that's why I really like this widget thing of basically compress everything within my system down to what are the top 2 things I should be doing right now. And 2 feels like it's the perfect number because it's like, if I'm not doing that, I should be doing this. And so that's how I kind of go through the list. But my frustration with a lot of task managers is that even if they have good sorting systems, like I don't like the thing where many of them in the sidebar, they'll still show you, here's all of your lists. And I just don't like that. I don't like seeing like all of the areas of responsibility in my life and all of the projects, even if the actual list that I'm looking at only contains a couple number of items. So that's why this system is working great for me. It's a really powerful to-do manager, but I can use that power to actually make the whole thing disappear and just compress down to 2 items. And I should always be doing the one on the top or the one on the bottom. And I've yet to run into a situation where if an item comes up on that list and I think, I shouldn't be seeing that right now, I can figure it out through modifying the perspectives to make sure like, that doesn't happen again. I won't see that at this time. I'll see that at a later time. So that system is just working for me beautifully.
Very complicated, but like effective is how I would label that.
I am really happy to put a lot of work in to set something up.
Yes.
If it's going to then be exactly what I want later. And so that's what I feel like I did this year with OmniFocus, is I put a lot of work into trying to think about, okay, how is this going to be the thing that is exactly what I want? And it basically is that way. And no surprise here, I also have a series of shortcuts so that whenever I have to input something into the to-do system, when I input it, it asks me what kind of task is it, and then it just automatically gets filtered to where it needs to go so that it also just works within this system.
Yeah.
So if it required constant fiddling, this would be worthless, right? That would be against the whole purpose of it. But it's like a half-life curve of the initial work was a lot to get it set up the way that I want. And then as each day goes on, like, oh, the amount of work goes down and kind of the payoff goes up and up and up, which is exactly how I feel like, the best of software. That's exactly how it should be.
With this watch-based system, which it seems like you're in, how is task entry occurring? Are you entering them on the watch too, or do you like get another device?
No, so entry I'll do on the phone. So I have a shortcut on the phone where I can just like pop it in and then like say into Siri, and then it just asks me, what kind of task is this? And then it goes right into the system.
Because I assume that considering the like perspectives, task entry requires some metadata to be able to effectively show where it's meant to.
Exactly. If you want the perspectives to work well, there has to be metadata that those perspectives are filtering on. So that means what project is it in, or what task does it have, or what date does it have? Is it flagged or not? Is there anything in the notes? These are the main tools you have to like add data to a task. And so again, if I had to do this all the time, I would never bother doing it. But you can create a shortcut that just says, oh, do this.
And shortcuts is pretty good because if there's like certain words or phrases that is being looked for in a note, you could have shortcuts add those in based on a set of questions it could ask you, right? So like if there was like a special word that would highlight it in a particular perspective, shortcuts could pre-fill that for you based on some buttons that you would press.
Yeah, that's exactly what it does. I even have it do just like the little things. It's like if I need to get back to someone, like someone sends me a text message, I can't reply to them now. I can just enter the person's name, but then it will fill into my system of like reply to this person's name, and then it goes into the whole system where it's supposed to be sorted. So I just like that kind of thing also. It's like everything is filtered as well in the way that I want it to look exactly on my list.
Yeah.
So it's very nice. It's very satisfying. But yeah,
there is something funny about like you're not a great texter.
Oh no, I'm terrible.
Although you have been pretty good recently, but you, with me at least, you're not a great texter. But it is funny to me that you have like a whole system in OmniFocus that like will help you pre-fill to reply to text messages. I just find that funny. I can imagine that this is like a project of 1,000 unchecked tasks, many messages not replied.
No, but see, it's actually the reverse. I only do that when it's like, oh, I really need to get back to this person.
Yeah,
that's when it like sorts right to the top of like, you really need to reply to Myke about whatever. You can't do it now for whatever reason.
No, I get it. You would only ever do this if it was very urgent, right? Most of the time, you get back to me in a month.
I mean, I guess in theory, you could set up a system because Shortcuts has a trigger based on text messages. You could set up a system that automatically created a to-do every time someone sent you a text message to reply to them. That is technically possible.
I'd never considered that. That is hilarious. It's like if I can ever get my hands on your phone for 20 minutes, that's the one thing I'll do.
So I feel like I basically have back what I want, which is like the one true to-do system. I'm really happy with the way that it works. I'm using reminders in the way you are with like a couple of small family shared lists. Like it's not a big deal. But you have actually piqued my interest with the thing that you said about with things, because it has been on my mind of like, oh, I like the way this system works with OmniFocus so much that I don't love when it's the big project time that I'm loading something up and I'm like, I'm actually working on this thing. And it's mainly like, very big video projects I'm working on, like they're becoming complicated things. And I'm aware, like, I feel like this should live somewhere else now, because OmniFocus can just have a task that says like, work on the video, and it kind of points me to where I'm supposed to be. But I have been feeling like, I need something else for those projects.
Right.
Maybe like I could look at things, because just like you, I want to have each tool doing what it's supposed to be doing. And OmniFocus is perfectly serving, tell me what to do now.
Yeah.
But that's slightly different from I'm working on a thing that has a lot of complex interdependencies or reminders to myself that I need to think about, but none of it's time sensitive, but I'm working on it in the moment. It's much more like project files or something. So I might take a look at things for, oh, is this where these things go in the future? I don't know. So anyway, you piqued my interest with that, Myke.
Yeah, a little bit more detail I'll give on that.
Mm.
So Things basically has the ability for you to create a project that you assign no date to, and it goes into what they call the someday list. But they have the ability for you in a shortcut to just duplicate a project that would be in your someday list and set a date to it, make it an active project as such. What I like about this compared to other systems I've used in the past, so I used to use OmniFocus for this, I used to use Things before they had this function for this, and you would, in a shortcut, essentially put all of the tasks in some way, maybe like a plain text list that gets turned into like a list that you would check off. But what I like about this system is I can go into Things at any point and amend the kind of someday project, right? To add anything new or make any amendments. So then the next time that I duplicate it, it's now an amended list.
Right. You're iterating on the project list.
Yeah.
Right.
It's got this like a base thing that it pulls from. Like I've thought, about I could do this thing and I thought about doing this. Like I have like one packing list, but really I need a packing list for weekends and a packing list for weeks. Right, because if I'm doing an overnight trip or a weekend trip, it's very different what I'm going to need. Also, am I going to America or am I going to Europe? That's going to mean different electronics, stuff like that. I thought I've been thinking about doing something like that for my travel checklists. But I really like Things for this stuff, and the app is really nice to use, and it works really well for these very, very long lists. And you can put everything into categories as well, which I really enjoy. So everything can be under certain headings, which I use a lot for the Cortex ones. So I have like audio production, video production, posting, all that kind of stuff. They're under their own headers, because if you're just duplicating the project, it maintains all of that information.
I'd make a suggestion, though, with the travel packing stuff in particular. What I've always done with checklists like that, if you have similar but not identical things, right? Because with the travel, there's so much overlap, is I think it's a better idea to try to keep a single list, but I put just like text if statements basically in that list. So you say something like, I'm packing my toothbrush and I'm packing my underwear and I'm packing my socks or whatever. But then I would have an item that would say like, if abroad, pack passport. And then you could have something more generic, right? Like, oh, if it's hot, pack your shorts. If it's cold, pack your coat, right? I think the problem with the packing list is there are things you're going to want to iterate and change for every trip, and then you're changing it in 3 places, and I feel like you're never going to keep it in sync. So I would suggest try to just have it as one, but just make basically if notes to yourself that you get a free check if you don't need to do them as you're going through the list.
Do you have any more apps for the productivity category?
The last things I would just say for productivity for me is I'm still using Timelines as my time tracker. I initially started using this because I was trying to do a bunch of stuff where I wanted to be able to track time offline, and this was the only one that did it in the way that I like. I'm not quite doing that same thing anymore. That was an experiment that I realized was more trouble than it was actually worth. But I actually quite like the way that Timelines displays data. I like some of their widgets. I like some of just the way that it looks and the way that editing things are, and I got kind of used to it. So I'm sticking with Timelines for keeping track of all of my time tracking. And then the only other thing which I feel like is sort of adjacent to this is the things that I use for timers. So this is like what you're talking about with Do. Like Do has timers and it reminds you. It is remarkable to me. I've been trying to find a timer that has a number of features, but basically nobody has all of them. So it's a timer that I want to be able to, like, when I start working, as we discussed, I think on the last episode about like units of time that you're working. When I start working, it's like, I want a 1 hour and 22 minute timer to start when I'm beginning a writing session. And I want that to happen automatically. And then when I take a break, I want a 7-minute timer to start. But it has to have shortcut support, because when I start the break timer, I want it to automatically stop the writing timer.
Sure.
So that one doesn't just go off. And then, like, very quickly you realize, there's a couple of complicated interactions. If you want everything to be automatic, it has to have good shortcut support. I want it on all platforms, and I want it to have the thing that Do does where it will keep bugging you. And looking around, it's like last year I was using an app called Just Timers to try to accomplish this, but it got just worse at the syncing feature. I just found increasingly over time it was not syncing across devices. So if I started on one device, it wouldn't sync changes on the other, and then you'd get like timers going off. Like this was no good. Do I was like so excited and then so crestfallen because Do this year finally added shortcut support for timers. And I was like, that's great. This is exactly what I want. But they only added the ability to start timers with shortcuts. There's no ability to stop a timer with shortcuts. So I was like, it's brutal. And I immediately emailed them, like, please, could you add the ability to stop? You're like the app I've wanted to use for years, but I can't. So in the meantime, the only other app on the whole of the ecosystem, and I have looked everywhere that does it, is an app called Multi-Timer. That's the one that will have all of these features. Each platform, if you use the iPad app on your computer, shortcut support, repeating alerts, and it syncs across all of devices. So that is my current timer of choice. But I will say I will switch to Do in a heartbeat if they add the ability to stop timers via shortcuts.
Communications and team. This is the category I've been the most excited to talk about, and is I think where I have the most to say this year.
Oh, good. This is my least favorite category. I hate it so much. Fill me with joy, Myke.
Because in the year of people, you have the year of team apps. That's what happens.
Okay.
When your yearly theme is the year of people, it means you're working with people. Mm-hmm. People need to be communicated with.
Do they? Can't you just every once a month set up a reminder that says you really need to reply to someone and just leave it at that?
You can do that, but then
not.
You probably shouldn't have year of people as your yearly theme.
Okay, true.
You know?
All right, tell me what you've been up to. What are you doing over there?
I'm going to start off with email. Because I think, obviously this year I've been on an email journey where a number of months ago you suggested that I absolutely upend everything about my email system. And so now I have no notifications for email anywhere. That has remained.
So great.
And it has made me so happy. I realized I didn't need it, which is like, imagine that. And so that's been fantastic for me. And I have kind of a new process, a process that is kind of embedded over time. My plan was to do no email on my iPhone. That hasn't remained exactly true, but it is significantly better than before. So on my iPhone, I use the Apple Mail app. And what I'm doing really is a few times a day, I'm checking in on it and doing some triage. But it is nowhere near as much as I was doing before, and I'm nowhere near as aware of my email as I was before because I'm not getting notifications to drag me in. Like, I'm checking email more on my own terms than it setting its terms on me. That has been a really great balance for me. And I would say, like, the Apple Mail app actually has gotten a bunch of improvements in the exact time that I've wanted them. Most of them powered by our friend, Apple Intelligence. So I actually really like the way that it's working for me with mail, where, when you go to the inbox, it doesn't just have any more like over and over and over again, like, hi, Myke, how are you? As the beginning of every email as the preview. It's summarizing the contents of the email and giving that to me as the preview instead in the actual email inbox, which I find to be quite useful. It helps me triage faster. And actually, as we're recording this, iOS 18.2 just came out and brought with it the automatic sorting of email as well.
Oh, I forgot that was a separate feature because I've been using the beta as well. And I agree, that summary thing that they're doing is for another show. There's places I really loathe it, but in email, like, this is where it belongs. And I've actually found it's actually really quite helpful and genuinely is useful for speeding things up. But it selects a couple of messages to show you at the top, and I thought that's what the priority sorting was, but it's like a separate feature.
Those are priority messages.
Oh, okay.
Which the priority messages feature is really hit and miss for me. It rarely, if ever, shows up. I don't know why, but this is like, it's automatically categorizing emails of like kind of dealing with people, newsletters and promotions, like that kind of stuff like you get in Gmail. Well, Apple's doing this themselves now in the Mail app, which is really interesting. However, it seems that it's only on the iPhone, which is terrible.
Oh, what's the worst place to put it?
It's not on the iPad. But anyway, on my iPhone, primary, transactions, updates, and promotions is how they separate it. And I actually like it. I think that is a good system for me, but I want it everywhere. Otherwise, what's the point? But anyway, I'm rarely doing anything on my iPhone other than kind of like triaging mail, or if there is an email that is like urgent that has popped into my mind, I'll just grab my iPhone and do that. But the biggest difference and the thing that has made the most long-lasting impact is just getting rid of the notifications, because it is much more that like email is the thing that I do when I want to rather than me being aware of everything. And I have not had, in the 6 months I've been doing this, I have not had one bad thing happen because of this.
Fantastic. It's so good. I'm so glad to hear this.
On my Mac and on my iPad, I'm still using Spark, which was the email app that I was using before, because this is where, like, if I'm going to be actually doing the email, that's where I'm going to do it. But I'm thinking I'm just going to move to Mail.
I mean, yeah, like what would be the features that would prevent you from doing so on Spark?
Well, so there's kind of two areas. One's the team sharing stuff, right? So having the features to be able to really easily share email with others, have inline communication and conversations. And then also just some fiddly little features, like the Apple Mail app automatically goes to the next message and marks it as read once you've archived an email. So you archive an email and it will go to the next email and just open it. I don't want it to do this. I want it to not select the next email, because like I leave emails unread as a system of dealing with them, right? Lots of email applications, third-party apps, have a setting for this because it's something a lot of people want. Apple has no setting for this. So I have an email open, I archive that email, it immediately opens the next email. It's like, that's not what I want you to do, but it's what it does. Now, maybe I'll just say whatever and get on with it. Basically, for me at this point, I'm not really using the team communication stuff in Spark anymore. This is like something that I've realized in reflecting in this episode. If Apple added the categorization stuff to the other apps, it'd be really easy for me to make that switch, because Spark does it too. And I actually really like the way that Spark does it. But now if I was to move away to just Apple's Mail app, on the two platforms where I'm actually dealing with my email, there's no categorization happening. It's just going to be one singular list, because for a reason I cannot fathom right now, Apple's only got it on the iPhone. So we'll see. I mean, basically at this point, I feel like I don't need the team sharing features anymore. Like I very seldom actually do the email sharing, because I've gotten to the point where like I get less and less and less involved in the sales. Kerry at Relay is doing all of the sales. I could at this point just be forwarding her email. I think this might be a thing where like when I mention it to Kerry, she'll be like, oh yeah, we don't really do that anymore. And maybe she'll be happy because she wouldn't have to use Spark anymore either if she doesn't want to. So this might be a thing that I'll do. Apple will make this easier for me if they give me like parity across the different applications, but I might just do it anyway.
I never really thought about that. It opens the next message and marks it unread. But you know, they also have the new like remind me feature. Like I don't know if that would help with like why you're leaving things open, because I've been surprised at how useful that is. It is crazy to me that remind me in 15 minutes, remind me an hour, and then remind me in 3 hours are the default options. And then you have to go into a sub menu if you want to pick anything else, which is just crazy.
I don't think that feature's what I want. I mean, really, it's just like, this has been how I've always handled email. Like I have a bunch of email in my inbox. Some of it is unread, some of it is read. The stuff that is read is like, you know, I'm waiting on someone to get back to me, and it's almost like a reminder that I'm waiting on that person to get back to me. And if it's unread, then I am the person who needs to get back to someone.
Okay, right. Yeah, so that's not helping you at all.
No. And so what I would do if I was to move to Mail is just get back into the system that I've had with many email apps over the years, where I just mark it as unread again. You know, just like go back to the list.
Right. Just every single time do that. Yeah.
But look, if I was to change email app, then maybe I would develop some new habits again. But I wonder, maybe by the time we do this next year, I've moved on to the Mail app. But then team communications and sharing stuff with teams. I have nothing new to say about Slack, but it's still the app that I use.
Great. I could say the same thing. Slack. I have nothing new to say. It's still the app that I use.
Yeah. It just is what it is now.
It just is what it is.
It's like in previous times, I would just say I use an email app and kind of move on from it. Slack is essentially that now. I have nothing novel to say about it that I haven't said in the past. It allows for teams to get together and it allows for communication. At this point, though, really just... okay, so I have got things to say, it turns out.
I was like, what's happening, Myke?
I still just cannot believe that they don't have just like the one overview of everything. All of the Slacks that I'm in. My life would be so much happier if I didn't have to just keep moving between one Slack and another to see if there's anything in there from me, or to see what is in each, right? Like you've got a badge on one Slack, but is it a new message or is it the message you just haven't dealt with yet? And you have to switch to that Slack to actually find that information out. Well, like what I would like is one dashboard where I can just see all of the communications for both Slacks that I need to see, but I don't think they're ever going to do it.
You're never going to get it.
Never going to get
It's
it.
never going to happen.
So
no.
let's move to brighter pastures and talk about something that has actually been very useful for me in the last year, which is Notion.
Okay. Yeah, you're part of the Notion Nation.
I am in it now. There is no going back now. So this has become more and more and more important for me over the last year when it comes to working with other people, which has been the thing that has been my focus this year. It's been my theme, is to work with people. And since we recorded State of the Apps last time, I'm working with like 4 more people in Cortex brand. And so that is requiring a lot of sharing of knowledge, recording things, and making them available for the people that need them. This has come from email content planning to social media content planning to branding communications and to having agendas and notes for meetings and calls. Notion at this point is essentially the complete home for everything to do with Cortex brand. As always, I think I could probably still be using it more efficiently than I am, but it is a process, and like I think I get better all the time at understanding where things go, how they should be laid out. And my assistant has been really helpful in helping me kind of wrangle this. Like, she's just one of these people that like lives in Notion and really understands how to use Notion, and she's been helping me a lot at making things look good. And sometimes I'll be like, I can't get it to do this thing. She's like, let me work out how to do it for you, and is making it work. Like, one thing that I really love is every week we go through a Cortex brand, all the products that we have, and like where they are and like what's going on with them. And it's laid out in this really nice Kanban board of like, this is an idea, this is in production. But that doesn't tell the whole story. Like an item that is in production could mean a lot of things over a long period of time. So then if you click into each item, it takes you to a page for it where it has a bunch of documents, but also at the top, something that she built was like a status log. So every week we'll click the button and take notes on what's new. And that will just be the like, where is this, what has happened in the last week for this item? And you can go through and look at the status log over history, which is it's just like a really nice way that anyone can go into our projects area and they can get an overview of any product and what has been the most recent updates for it. So like, I really like this kind of system. I like that projects appear as these little cards, but then when you click into them, there's actually everything you could ever need to know about this product. I just think it's like a really nice system. I know that there are more project management like features of Notion, and I want to continue like moving through some of those things as they naturally come up. It's been really helpful for me to be able to work with someone who really understands this and can kind of help me out. But I also know that if there is one thing that you can just get more information about at any time, you just go to YouTube and you just type in Notion and like, you'll be fine, right? Like, it's out there.
There is no shortage of tutorials on Notion.
Yeah.
I have never sought them out, but they still seek me out on YouTube.
Yes.
YouTube's absolutely convinced, like, I am a person who needs more Notion in my life. It's like, I have never watched one of these, but you have so many to recommend. You just keep trying, YouTube.
It's also where everything to do with Cortex goes now. So we have our content calendar. Our content calendar has actually just become where the show notes live for the show. So if I have a link or an item that pops up, I can just save it from the share sheet on any of my devices and it will go into Notion. And you can categorize it a little bit that way. So every topic for the show is like its own individual card. And we can add our notes to it and we can move them around from episode to episode. Like, I really like this system. Again, it's like another Kanban board. It's really good for like the content planning of the show. We have every episode for like the next 12 months. They all have their own individual thing. And so like we could be like, oh, so when is State of the Hardware going to be? We can put that in there. When is Yearly Themes going to be? We can put that in there. And it really helps me just to get this one big overview of these are the big milestones for the year, like the tentpole episodes. And then I have these other ideas for content. Where can we fit those in? I really like this as a system. It's working very well for thinking about the show on a longer term. I really like it for that rather than just a Google Doc with a bunch of headings that just go into infinity.
Yeah, I do have to say, I'm not such a Notion head person, but the way we're doing the podcast here, I feel like it's such a huge improvement in the system from before. And for anyone who has content that they're planning, I feel like you should be doing something like this. It's just much better to be able to look at it in this way and have all the topics broken down. And it's helped us avoid a little bit of the stack September problem of spacing things out. It's been really, really good. Like I just always want to mention it because I was sort of dubious at the start because I'm not a huge fan of Notion, but this has really, really proven its worth as a way to organize this kind of stuff.
We've also started using Notion with the Connector podcast too.
Oh, have you?
Yeah, Steven's managing that one and he's done a really good job. Like there's a page for every episode and they have templates with the typical format of the show. But then like various games and predictions that we play on the show also have their own places in the Notion sheet. It's working very well for that show. I don't treat it exactly the same. Like I still put some like prep for Connected in my Apple Notes that I keep for my other shows. Like all of my other podcasts have their own Apple Notes and I save links that I find around the web to those notes. I'm not doing that for Cortex anymore because it's just like a different flow of preparing for the show because this show is not really focused so much on what is happening in the news impacting the show, where my other weekly shows are. It's like more news focused. So as I find links online, I just save them to triage them later on and I go through and build what I want to talk about on each week's episode that way. But just as we're all sharing it amongst the three of us. We can all see it and go into the topics at any time. And we also have just like everything else related to the show is all within the Notion. So for the year of people, Notion has been the absolute biggest impact, I think, helping me to work with a growing number of people all on the same items all at one time. It really is like the tools for that now, I think. And they've done a good job with it. And I like it. I like using it. I think as well of these kinds of applications, these like team-focused applications, it is the most responsive on my iPhone, like with the iPhone app of any of these things that I've used. I think they do a really good job of it for as much as these web-backed technologies effectively can be done. I think Notion does a really good job.
How do you feel like you avoid the problem we were talking about with just a shared to-do list? Because this is always the issue for me with Notion is it feels like, it's hard to share a to-do list with people because people don't write or consume information in the same way. Like, this is why I have an issue with it, is it just feels like Notion is that times a billion. It just feels like it's such a bigger problem, but it feels like you don't have that same kind of frustration with it in the way that you're using it. I'm just kind of curious if there's anything in particular you're doing to achieve that.
Well, one, there are no tasks. We don't have any tasks for people in Notion. It really is just text documents in some ways.
Okay.
As well, like within the team that I'm working in, I'm kind of setting the direction for how I want this stuff to be laid out. So, like, it's working for me, you know what I mean? Like, this might be a better question for everybody else. Like, is it working for them, you know?
Okay, right. King Myke has no problems. King Myke is decreeing how it goes.
Because it started with, this is all of my information organized the way I want it to be.
Right,
Like, that was the starting structure, and then we're building on it from there. And it sounds bad, I guess, but it's just like, at the moment, a lot of this stuff is existing in my head. And so it's just forming the structure that makes the most sense for me. That will naturally change as time goes on. But as of right now, I think it's still too fresh for it to have adapted into a system of its own. So it works for me because like everything is just individual pages and stuff is organized in outlines, which is kind of how I think. Outside of that, it's a lot more of like finished work, you know? So like, hey, here's an email that I've worked on. You just share it, and then you can mark it up together as, you know, comments and stuff like that. Outside of that, I think the structure is fine. One thing I'll say, actually, there is a lot of structure that works for the way that my system works, and I just don't interact with it that way.
Right, okay.
We have like a dashboard, which has like a bunch of stuff. I never use that. But like I know she uses it because it helps her jump to where she needs to be. Well, I just have a bunch of favorites of the things that I'm in often, or I'm just searching for files. So it's pretty flexible in that way. Like, and I think the benefit of something like a Notion over, say, a Todoist is Todoist can only really surface its content to you in the way that it can. It has limited ways in which it can show you that content. Everything in Notion is just a series of databases where you can have lots of different views to show off the exact same set of data. And so people could just set them up the way that they want to. It's all just a list of pages, essentially, right? Like pages within a database, like data within a database. And do you want to see this as a list? Do you want to see this as a Kanban board? Do you want to see this as a gallery? Like, you can choose any way to show off this information. And I think people just pick the way that works best for them.
Okay.
So maybe that's why. Maybe everybody's just got their own way of looking at things that's using the Notion, and they're all happy with it because it works for them. There's a couple of other tools that are new for working with people. So Figma, which is a design tool.
Oh, Figma.
I have no idea how to make anything in Figma, but people share their work with me, and it's really great. It's like an infinite canvas for design. Most of the stuff I'm seeing is like web design stuff or branding stuff. Really, as a person who is interacting with Figma, I'm mostly just having work shown to me from the designers that we work with. What I like about it as somebody who is looking at Figma in that way is, say you're on a call with someone and you're in the Figma board, which doesn't need to be shared because everybody's just looking at it in a URL, right? It's all in the web. Somebody has the ability to become the presenter.
Yes, yeah. Mm-hmm.
And then it just follows their cursor around. Like, you're looking at the web page. You've not done anything new. You're not sharing a screen. But now this person is in control. And so the view just follows them around the kind of infinite canvas. I think it's really clever how they do that.
Yeah, I've used that feature this year. I've started using Figma, and that is very cool. Like, it just works quite intuitively the way you want it to. It's kind of amazing how it's just a really, like, super lightweight screen sharing. It's barely even that, but the ability for someone to just say, let me take control and let me just show you a bunch of things on this board is really good. It works so well.
I like that a lot. I've used Canva a little bit as well. This is mostly for taking our assets and laying them out for social posts. Canva has started to go very heavy into generative AI, which is interesting. It's not what we're using. It's to take the templates that we have for some of our social posts. But I think we're going to start moving that over to Figma now as well. But these are tools that I've been using this year of, like, people are laying out things from a design perspective and they want to get my input or my approval on them so we can post them. And so these are tools that I've been using to, like, collaborate with people with these kinds of assets. A couple of other little bits. Vision Pro spatial persona calls. This is a thing me and you have done a few times. It's the absolute best way to conduct a meeting, but high barrier of entry.
Despite my great protestations, I have been convinced to do this year. And yeah, I can't agree with you more. Mm-hmm. It is the best way to communicate with someone remotely. Just like, no questions. It's all of the good things about what we were doing with the Quest without really any of the bad things. But the good things are so much better. Yeah. I couldn't have been a more doubtful person about this system right from the start. I could not possibly have been more resistant, but I am completely convinced. The meetings that we have done in those Vision Pro calls, like with the Quest, it always felt like, oh, you and me had a meeting somewhere, right, in this virtual environment where I was a pretty cowgirl. Mm-hmm. But when we do those calls, my brain forgets that you aren't there. That's much more the way it is. Yep. It's like, oh, Myke is sitting across the table from me, which again is the big difference there of, like, oh, Myke can be placed in physical space in a location that makes sense. And obviously when we're having the calls, I know what we're doing. It doesn't have that same kind of illusion that the Quest did of, like, oh, this is real. I'm aware that it's a Vision Pro call, but it's in the memory of it, it feels like you came over and we had a meeting. It's unbelievable.
It's the absolute closest thing to real life.
Yeah, it really is.
I know it sounds bananas to say that, but, like, it absolutely is. Like, the sense of presence that you have is incredible. Sharing documents within that screen, and you're looking at each other, looking at the document, pointing at things, and it, like, being able to follow the eye line. Like, it. If you're thinking to yourself, like, what is the Vision Pro for? Like, this is, for me, the absolute key thing that it's for. Now, it should do more, right? Like, this isn't enough for the price tag. But if you're looking for a concrete thing of what this product does better than anything else, it is meetings. It is the absolute very best telepresence product. It is better than any video calling solution because it's just more comfortable for you as a person because you don't have to think about being on camera. You don't get distracted by the image of yourself, which is something I do get distracted by. Like, how do I look? How am I sitting right now? Like, I find it to be very tiring. And the technology of the Vision Pro is easier for me from an eye strain perspective, and I don't get headaches like I would with the Quest Pro. It is absolutely, bar none, the very best way to have a meeting with somebody not in the same room.
It's funny. I didn't really think about that way because, of course, 99% of my use is using it functionally as an external monitor for my Mac, which I love. Like, and I think even that is great. But you're totally right. This is actually the thing that it does the best, and it does it best by a huge margin. The biggest problem, of course, is I wish I had more people that I could do this with, because I would hold every virtual call this way if I could.
This episode of Cortex is brought to you by Squarespace, the all-in-one website platform for entrepreneurs to stand out and succeed online. Whether you're just getting started with a website of your own or managing a growing brand, you can stand out from the crowd with a beautiful website, engage directly with your audience, and sell your products, your services, anything, even the content that you create, because Squarespace has everything you need all in one place and all on your terms. You can make the most of design intelligence from Squarespace. They combine 2 decades of industry-leading design expertise of cutting-edge AI technology to help you unlock your strongest creative potential. Design intelligence empowers anyone to more easily than ever build a beautiful, even more personalized, tailored website to their unique needs, crafting a bespoke digital identity to use across your entire online presence. Squarespace has incredible tools to help you build websites of your own. It's been my favorite thing about them for the 15 years I've been using them. Their tools are really easy to understand. You get started with templates and you can drag and drop things to your heart's content. But now with design intelligence, they're making it easier than ever for you to get that starting point that then you can go in and tweak however you like. Squarespace Payments is the easiest way to manage your payments in one place. Onboarding is fast and simple. You can get started in just a few clicks and receive payments right away. Plus, give your customers more ways to pay by choosing from popular payment methods like Klarna, ACH Direct Debit, Apple Pay, Afterpay, and ClearPay, depending on where you're located. And you can keep track of all of the stats that matter most with Squarespace's analytics tools. You can measure your end-to-end online performance of website and seller analytics, get insights on top traffic sources, understand how your reach is growing, track sales metrics, and learn where to focus new engagement. It's all the data you need to scale your brand and business, fully integrated and clearly displayed. I really love how much Squarespace grows with you as your website or business grows, has all of the tools that you're going to need to make it the best it can be. Go to squarespace.com and you could sign up for a free trial today. And when you're ready to launch, go to squarespace.com/Cortex and you'll save 10% of your first purchase of a website or domain. That is squarespace.com/Cortex when you decide to sign up, and you'll save 10% of your first purchase and show your support for the show. Our thanks to Squarespace for their support of this show and all of Relay. I have a lot of stuff for communication and team.
I have very little.
And I have very little when it comes to writing and research, so why don't you take it away?
Yeah, I have things to say about writing and research. I'm just realizing in this moment, I feel like as we're coming towards, the end of this year, and it's at like this state of the apps, I just feel very happy and confident in all of the software that I'm using. And it's like, I feel like the system is going pretty well. And it's because I've got the to-do system that I want. It's doing what I want. And Obsidian is just one of those tools that the more I use it, the more I love it. It is just the absolutely perfect writing system for me. And it's a funny thing to say because as much as I kind of resist Notion, like there's something about Notion that just doesn't quite work for me. Obsidian is very Notion-like. It's just the devil is in the details. It's the same kind of thing. Like, you just have a billion different documents and you have different ways of looking at those documents or connecting those documents or making like lists and sublists of lists. But the thing about Obsidian that it's like, why is it so good? And why is it, again, a piece of software that the more you invest into it, the more you get out of it, is because it has this whole ecosystem of additional plugins and tweaks and just a million settings. And so you can get it to work exactly the way your brain wants things to work. And that to me is just so critical because it's kind of like with a to-do manager where I'm trying to achieve something. The to-do manager should tell me just the things that I can do right now and not give me too many options. The key thing for me with Obsidian is I need, when I'm working on a script, especially if it's a big and complicated script, I need to be able to just focus on this one thing. But I also really need to be able to, when I have a thought about something else, some related project or some unrelated project, I need to be able to very quickly get to like, oh, I had a thought about the bonus video that I'm working on for that script. I need to instantly be able to like get out of the script that I'm in, into the bonus video, get like straight to the section where I've thought about the thing, add what just came back into my head, and then get right back to where I was on the previous script. And I need to be able to do that in like half a second with a couple of keyboard shortcuts. And that is the thing that Obsidian is just killer at. Like with a couple of tweaks, with a couple of plugins, it's like you can get it to do just this, like boom, 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 hit a couple keys, type a thing, dump your sentence, and jump exactly back to where you were. And it's one of those cases where the speed really matters because to me, it's all about don't break flow. If it takes more than a couple seconds to get and find the thing, you're breaking your flow on the main thing that you're working on. And so that's why it's just like absolutely invaluable to me. And then on a higher level, when I'm not doing the core writing work, when I'm doing what I'm thinking of as like fact checking and review working of a project, there's a similar thing where like with just a couple of buttons, I can now turn it into a kind of overview of this project. Like here's the script, here's a file with all of the cut sections from the script, here's a file with questions that you need to answer about this script, here's like the project file for everything that's related to this project, and I can see them all at once and like arrange them exactly the way that I want. So I think if you work with text a lot, even if you're not doing writing stuff, but if you deal with a lot of text, you just have to give Obsidian a try. And when you load it up, if you at any moment think, I wish I could do this way, the answer is you can. Like, I guarantee you there's a way that you can do it. You just need to look around. Like, someone's made a plugin for it. If someone hasn't made a plugin for it, you can generate your own CSS to inject into the program to be like, I want it to work this way. It's like no one wrote a plugin, but I can hack together some CSS to make this work. You can do it. It is just unbelievable how flexible this program is. So Obsidian is perfection, and I could not possibly be happier with it. The only other place with like writing stuff down or with notes is I feel like I'm in a little bit of a rethink of what I'm going to do with Apple Notes, because I feel like I must have been a really big dummy, but I never realized that the Apple Notes Quick Notes system syncs across devices. I swear that it didn't used to, but I only just realized like a couple months ago, like, oh, the Quick Notes thing syncs everywhere. Like it's just the same.
Yeah, it always has, but you can lose it because it saves it into like a separate place sometimes.
Okay, what do you mean it saves it into a separate place?
In Notes, if you go out to the main kind of folder section, you have Quick Notes and Shared, and then Notes. Like I think it's easy to miss it sometimes, but no, Quick Notes do share everywhere.
Okay, so all right, so yeah, maybe that's why I just missed it, because I was always looking at the list of folders or whatever. But I have been kind of thinking, Notes is another one of these apps. Like it's just gotten better and better and better over the years, and I've been watching more and more people use Notes as what I almost feel like is a kind of pseudo file system. Like it seems like that's what lots of people are using Notes for, is just a kind of filing drawer of information that they want access to. And I've always just used actual files and folders on my computer for a long time to do this. But I've been thinking, if Quick Notes can be the thing that I've been using Notes for years, as just, this is the inbox of I just want to write something down, I don't know where it goes. I've just been using the whole of Notes for that for forever. But I think the thing that I'm trying to solve is I probably have too many non-actionable things that are in Obsidian, like reference files in some way. And I think I would prefer to get those out of there and go somewhere else. So I think maybe by next year, what I'll start doing is just taking everything that is static in some sense and slowly moving it over into Apple Notes, because this feels like I see everybody else do this, and I think it is clearly what Apple Notes is designed to do very well. Like, go to this one place to find all the information. What are you laughing at, Myke?
They're notes. That's what notes are. That's what they are. I see everybody using these pieces of text.
Yeah, they're using these text things. Like, it's interesting.
Very peculiar.
Yeah, it's like, Myke, they're putting like reference information
Right.
on these notes.
Weird.
You know, like in school,
Weird.
you're supposed to take notes.
It's like
And then
those
you go
notes.
back to them. Like, I wonder if that's why Apple called it Apple Notes. Is that's like what they're
weird.
trying to hearken back to? Is
the
the
old
concept
days.
of notes in school?
Maybe. I mean, I still use Apple Notes for all my notes, as I mentioned earlier. And it's like all my show prep goes in there. But if I have ideas about things, as long as it's not Cortex brand, it goes in Apple Notes. But that's also stuff like I'm at a restaurant, got to order at the bar. I'll take everybody's order in Apple Notes, go up, deal with it, delete it. You know what I mean? But I also just I have like 800 notes in my Apple Notes because I don't really delete stuff because I feel like it doesn't really need it. And I then have this searchable list of stuff over time. I'm a big fan of Apple Notes. I actually do have a couple of other things to talk about in a writing context. It's just not like you or all, really. And I apologize to all the writers out there because the things I'm going to talk about, you're just not going to be happy about. Let's talk about ChatGPT.
You know, it's funny. I was trying to think, like, where do we talk about the AI stuff? And I guess this is probably the most relevant section. Okay, so tell me about ChatGPT.
I remember last year we were like, shall we set up an AI category? And the decision was no, because these things will just be part of different workflows, which is the way that it is. So like ChatGPT for me, I use with text, right? Essentially. And like the places that I'm working on text, I am likely to use it in some form. Now, I don't use ChatGPT to be like, hey, write this thing for me. But I use it in two ways, which is one, to take my text and do something with it, or I use it in place of Google more and more. So with the Google thing, it's like basically if I have any search that I want to do that I don't already know how to get the answer for, and Google is just the leapfrog step, then I will go to ChatGPT. So like, for example, if I wanted a recommendation for a toaster, I want to buy a toaster, I would go to ChatGPT and ask that question. Because what it's going to do is read 20 top 10 lists and collect that information from me. Where I know if I go to Google, it's going to take me ages, right?
Now you're the ChatGPT if you go to Google, like a sucker.
Yeah. And what I do is I will use what it gives me as the starting point to then do a little bit of my own research and read up about some stuff. But it helps me jump a bunch of steps. But like, for example, if there was a toaster reviewer that I liked, I would go to Google and just type in toaster and the name of the reviewer of the toasters. You know what I mean?
Oh,
That's like the difference. Where like for Google, I'm just using it as a leapfrog, as a way to get to the thing that I already know exists.
You just crystallized a change in my own behavior that I didn't have a word for. But yes, that is exactly what it is. It's using Google to get me to a thing that I already know that I want to go for.
Yeah.
That's the only thing I'm using search engines for now. Boy, that's a really good crystallization of the behavior change.
Because all of these AI tools, if they're connected to the internet, they're better at searching than Google is. And I'm sure that's the same for Gemini, but I'm just not really interested in Gemini. I can't put my finger on it. I'm just not. And I think it's just that they were light, and ChatGPT for me is just as good, so it's what I'm using right now. But for my own text, typically what I'll do is, like I was actually doing this today, I was writing an email that we're going to send to the Cortex brand newsletter, like the mailing list, about the Subtle line of products, like the Subtle range of products that we're putting on sale. And I wrote out what I wanted, and I just wanted to run it through ChatGPT to be like, can you improve the grammar of this? And it did that. And there was one sentence that I didn't like, and so I took that sentence and I rewrote it myself and then put it through again, and we kind of worked together in a way to nail down the wording that I wanted. And that's typically what I do. And for me, something that works very well is I'm just like, check this for grammar, rewrite it if you need to, don't change my style and tone. And that for me is just like a very good shortcut to get something that still feels like I wrote it, but is improved. And then from there, I will send it and work with the people that we work with to copy edit it and all that kind of stuff. But I like to get something in a halfway done state before I'm passing it on to the people that I work with, so I make sure that I've kind of got what I want down. And so I like that. I've been playing with because Apple have their own writing tools now, right? And they're pretty good at proofreading. For rewriting, the pre-canned options that they have are way too enthusiastic. Now, what they have just added, again, in 18.2, which has just come out when we're recording this, is the ability to describe the change that you're looking for, which I think might be able to get me some better results. So I'm going to play around with that a little bit more too. I've been trying out a new kind of combo of tools for helping me get information from podcasts, which is a combo of Descript and Claude from Anthropic. So, like, for example, for this episode, I wanted to get a list of every app that we had spoken about. Now, I have our show notes, but I wanted just a text list of all the apps broken down into the categories of exactly when we mentioned them. And so I was able to use Descript to create a transcript of the show. And I took that file, gave it to Claude, and was like, give me basically that. I want a list of all of these things broken down into the categories that we spoke about in the show. And it did a pretty good job of doing that. I shared that list with you. What I found funny was I also gave it to ChatGPT, and ChatGPT failed hard. It got like half of the apps that we mentioned. And I just found that really interesting. And I'd heard from people like you and some other friends, like Claude is actually particularly good at this kind of thing. And I've been happy with that. So like I've also used it on our last episode to help me pick a title for the show, where I gave it the transcript and was like, help me pick a title for this episode based on something we said. And it gave me like 20 options, and I was able to use that to pick one. So I'm using some of these tools to help extract information from the podcasts, which is otherwise complicated to do because there's a lot of words in these podcasts.
Yeah, Claude is really good at the word stuff. Like, it's an interesting trade-off between the two of them. Claude is clearly smarter than ChatGPT, I think by quite a lot. But Claude doesn't have any access to the internet.
And that makes my usage of it very difficult because I really like to use these tools as like a way to grab internet stuff, and it doesn't do any of that, which is like, so most of the things that I ask Claude to do, the answer is usually, I can't do that for you. And so I'm like, what am I supposed to use this for? And this is one of them.
Right, yeah. Then you have to go to the one that's wearing a dunce cap, which is ChatGPT, and be like, can you just search this things for me? I'm like, oh, ChatGPT, when it came out, we're like, oh, this is amazing. And now every time I go back to it, it's like, I do use it because it's connected to the internet, and it's useful for a ton of those tools. But I'm just so aware of, like, you are much dumber than Claude.
I also wanted to mention a couple of things on creative work that aren't writing. So just a couple of apps that I've been using. I've really been liking Apple's Freeform app for some product design stuff, because it is essentially a very simple infinite canvas app. And if I'm brainstorming product ideas with my iPad and my Apple Pencil, I can kind of draw things, draw arrows, and then draw something else, and just go on forever and ever and ever in this infinite canvas, right? I find it to be a very simple tool, but a good one at helping me kind of sketch and brainstorm and bring in imagery and web page stuff and mixed media. I like it. It's very simple. I've tried some more complicated apps.
I was going to say, why, if you're already using Figma, why aren't you using Figma? Like, it's the same thing.
Well, because I don't understand how to use Figma.
Okay, because it's too complicated. I mean, it does look pretty complicated. Yeah.
And also, I really want something I can sit and use my Apple Pencil.
Oh, of course. Right.
And so that's what I want. It's just to sit and just sketch with my Apple Pencil and make notes with my Apple Pencil. And I've used a few different apps. Like, there's an app called Concept, which is pretty good, but it's more complicated that I want. Freeform is where I've been landing. And I've had a few things that I've been using Freeform for recently, and I really like it. It does a good job and works really nicely. And I love the new Apple Pencil Pro. It's got like the little shortcuts and all of the ways you can squeeze it to get the tools and stuff. And I found that to be a really cool combo.
Do they have a dark mode yet? I opened it up once to take a look at it and saw there was no dark mode. And I thought, I can't look at this endless white piece of paper. I'm out of here. It's like, I can never use this until they have a dark mode.
I don't know, honestly. I'll have to check. And for photos, so like taking pictures of products, putting them on social media and stuff, for a long time, my photo editing app of choice is an app called Darkroom. I really like Darkroom. It gives me all of the functions that I need in a way that's very simple for me to understand, of being able to change brightness and exposure, contrast, sharpness, and play around with color in the photos that I take. And I usually run basically every photo that I publish to my personal Instagram. I use Darkroom for that. but I've been using it a bit more for product stuff. And similarly, I've been pairing this with a camera application called Halide. They have a new feature called Process Zero, where it's essentially skipping any of Apple's processing that it does to imagery, which sometimes can be really helpful for me to just get like, let's just get a flat image here, and then I can edit it a little bit more to my own desire and tastes in Darkroom. Now, what I will say is the new feature that Apple added with the iPhone 16 line, the new photographic styles, has also made it much easier for me to get the imagery looking the way that I want to, because they allow you to kind of go in and tweak things a bit more. But sometimes I just like to start with an absolute flat base, and that's what Halide gives me, because it's essentially stripping out any of the computational photography stuff, and then I can kind of edit from there. So I've been liking that combo too.
I think in future, Myke, for this section, right, we should be calling it not the writing and research section. I think this is the creativity, creation, and research section.
Oh, that's good.
That's what this is, because also, Myke, that's where we talk about the AI, because it is also the AI doing creativity, creation, and research.
You know what? Actually, if we're calling it that, I'm just going to run through a couple of other things real quick. I record all my podcasts using Audio Hijack. Audio Hijack is an incredible application that has really, really strong tools for how to manage audio streams and record them all separately. It's an incredible application. I love it. I use Logic Pro. We both use Logic Pro for editing podcasts. And I'll pick two more apps. One is an app called Fission. Fission is an app that like I've ever found before, where you can open an MP3 and edit the MP3 and save the MP3 without needing to re-export stuff. I don't know how they do it, but it's really good.
Wow, that's impressive. Okay, interesting.
And then we add chapters to all of our podcasts, and we use an app called Forecast to do that. It's a really great way to do that. So there are a few applications that I use for my main creation work, which is podcasting.
There we go. New section created. So just like you said, you didn't have anything to say about the writing and research category. You want to do entertainment apps next. And I will also let you take the floor here because of some theme year of small improvements stuff, being busy out in the West, I have had an insane year of near zero entertainment content consumption. Like almost nothing. Excluding the one thing I'll say, which is I use Overcast for podcasts and Feedbin plus Unread for some RSS stuff. And that is it. That's my only apps in the entertainment section for this year. So go, Myke. What are you using?
I'm going to recommend Marvel Unlimited. I spoke about reading comics in a previous episode, and this is how I do it. I think it's an incredible service with so much incredible content. If you want to get started with comics, it's a great place to start. I will recommend Balatro, which currently is my game of the year, and it is recently available on the iPhone. The easiest way to describe this, which is a way that doesn't accurately describe the game, it is a poker roguelike.
Oh, I think I've seen people talking about or playing this. It feels like it's one of these phenomenon games.
Yeah, it came out earlier this year on Steam and Switch, and immediately became like people loved it, and then Apple was able to get them to bring it to the iPhone. It's on the iPhone and on Android, but it's also on Apple Arcade too, so bravo on Apple for doing that. You essentially play a bunch of poker hands. If you've never played poker before, it's fine. Like, I'd never played poker before. The app does a great job of explaining to you like the hands. But what you're doing, every round you have to get to a score to advance through the game, but you pick up joker cards that give different abilities to the way that the cards are scored. Like, if you play such and such hand, your score is multiplied by X. You know, you finish your hand and it can be the whole score can be multiplied by Y. Like, it can get really complicated and interesting. And one of the ways to win is to get different ability cards that all kind of interact with each other in some way to boost your overall score. I love this game. It's so much fun, and it's impossible to explain. But if you have Apple Arcade, try it for sure. Even if you don't, like, it's on a bunch of platforms. It really is an excellent, excellent game in general, and an incredible game for the iPhone.
Does it make you want to play poker in real life, Myke?
No, but I feel like I could now.
Okay, yeah.
Because I kind of understand how to play poker now. Like, I've just, over the time of playing it this year, I now understand poker hands. Like, I know what they are. And the game, it just does a good job of, like, its simplicity will eventually help you become a poker player. But I've never played a game of poker. I could. I would, but I am not really particularly interested in doing so.
I'd like to imagine you sitting down and going, how many points for this joker?
I know.
Poker
It's like,
table.
how do I multiply the score? Come on, what's going on? This is boring. Delta was an app that came out earlier this year, which is an emulator for the iPhone for various Nintendo systems. If you have somehow got ROMs, which you can acquire many ways, but a way that I have them is with a little tool called the GB operator, which is like a little device I can plug into my Mac, and I can rip my old Game Boy games, of which I have, in a big box. I was able to go through a thing at my mum's house and find all my old Game Boy games and rip them with my GB operator and then play them on my iPhone. An incredible thing to occur in this year of 2024. So Delta is a fantastic app that has been in development for, I think, 10 years and was kind of under the radar. It couldn't be on the App Store, but because of rule changes in the EU, Apple allowed emulators onto the store, and Delta is just like an app which has been made with care and love. And if you happen to have ROMs of games, you can play them on your iPhone with Delta. And then the last one I mentioned, if you want to track the video games you're playing or want to play, I use an app called Game Track to do that, and it does exactly that. Helps you search through different games across various platforms. You can save them to lists, you can save them to collections, you can rate those games once you've completed them for your own lists and stuff like that, so you can keep a good history of all the games you've played.
Oh, so it's a reading list for your games. That's a good idea.
Yeah, and so it helps me when I hear somebody mention a video game, but it's in early access and it's coming out whenever. I can just save it to Game Track and I'll get to it when I want to. And this also has cool widgets that you might see later on in the show. This episode of Cortex is brought to you by TipTop. TipTop is a completely new way to pay that makes everything you buy more affordable and sustainable with trade-in at checkout. The way it works is incredibly easy. When you're making a purchase of TipTop, you simply select any item that you already own that you want to trade in from TipTop's catalog of over 50,000 choices, and then you'll receive instant credit towards your purchase. You send your old item in, you've made your purchase cheaper, and you've helped the planet by keeping your old stuff in circulation. If you're someone who has things lying around that you've been meaning to sell, you can use them to buy something new at TipTop partners like Nothing, Daylight, Cradlewise, and King of Christmas. If you're a merchant, you can easily enable TipTop with no upfront costs with support for integration with any store. Plus, they are currently offering $10,000 in TipTop promotional credit that you can use to help your customers learn about TipTop. If you're a merchant, you can get started by visiting tiptop.com/Cortex now, and you can sign up and claim the promo credit. And if you're a customer that wants to trade something in, there's a full list of partner stores there too, so go check it out. That is tiptop.com/Cortex. Our thanks to TipTop for their support of this show and all of Relay.
All right, I feel like we're starting a new tradition here on State of the Apps because now I have a section where you have nothing that you want to add. But so I did want to mention just a bunch of health apps together because I'll talk about it more in the theme episode. But again, year of small improvements. I had a lot of health stuff that I was working on this year. And so just wanted to quickly run through the things that I've liked. The tippy top one for me, I mention it a lot, but it really is such a big deal. Also, I know that they're a sponsor of Cortex, I believe a sponsor of this very episode. So you may or may not have already heard or will soon hear an ad from Fitbod.
Yes, they are a sponsor of this episode. Yes, Fitbod.
This is my exercise app of choice. I always say it, I feel like it is the single most life-changing app. And this year, because I was traveling a lot and like going out west and I was like switching hotels and different locations, like it's just been a lot of travel. The killer feature for me is like what is hard about exercising when you're changing locations is you have different equipment in different places. And like Fitbod's ability to just give you a workout and then you can quickly swap something out because like where you are doesn't have the machine, or even you're just at the gym and someone else is on the machine. For someone like me, again, I just feel like that is hugely vital. Like I get really frustrated if like an app tells you like, oh, you need to do these things for exercise, but then you're like waiting on a guy to finish on the machine or they don't have it. I just hate that. So I just really love Fitbod and I've made a ton of progress this year. And the main reason is because it just like makes it very, very easy to swap out exercises or even like the muscle group sometimes. It's like I went for a long hike last night and I don't want to do quads first thing in the morning. It's like, no, Fitbod, I'm going to do biceps instead of quads. And then it just like reworks the whole thing. Fantastic. Speaking of which, All Trails, best hiking app also by a mile. Like Apple's introduced a bunch of trail stuff this year, but I just think it is nowhere near as good as All Trails. Incredibly good at filtering out what kind of hike or walk you want to do, basically anywhere in the world. You can be like, I'm looking for a 2-mile easy walk with a scenic view. What's the nearest one to me? And like All Trails will find it. Download it offline on the watch. Really good. I've also for this year, for the first time ever, been successfully tracking food, and I entirely credit it to the app Food Noms, which I feel like hits for me 2 things. It is a really, really simple food tracker. It has shortcut integration, and it allows food to be fuzzy in a way. So you can say like, I'm at a meal at a restaurant. I don't know exactly what this is, but let's just say these values are like plus or minus 25%, whatever is put in. So I built a bunch of shortcuts to make things really quick for me to track with Food Noms.
Didn't they just added an AI thing that I thought looked really interesting?
Yeah, so I was going to say like that's the next thing. So the AI was the final bit that actually got me here because I've tried food tracking before, and just like with the exercise, right? It's very frustrating when you're trying to do something regularly and then you can't do some small part of it, and it always makes me feel like I just want to give up on this whole thing.
Yeah.
And so for like when someone cooks me a meal, I can just take a picture of it and do a quick description to Food Noms, and then the AI will create its best guess at the list of like, what does it think this is going to be? Mm-hmm. But you can also mark like, this is uncertain, whatever, but just log it. And I feel like that solves the problem for me of, I just hate when people are doing food tracking and they say things like, they're like, oh, you just learn after a while, like how many macros are in like a meal. Like you can just look at a burger and know. And I just hate it. Like, I think that's a kind of Stockholm syndrome, or like, I don't even know what, like people are just fooling themselves that they're great at this task. And I find it very annoying. And so to be able to mentally offload this onto the AI and just be like, hey, you guess, I actually don't even really care that much how accurate you are. And also this can be logged as like, this is an uncertain amount of food. Just factor that in. That's made all the difference in the world. And then sleep-wise, I've been using 2 other things. I've been using an app called Auto Sleep again, which is on my watch. This is one of those apps that tries to wake you up like just when you're ready to wake up. I would be really curious though if any listeners have like found any other app that does this, because it blows my mind that Auto Sleep seems to be the only app that tries to wake you up at the good moment, that doesn't do the thing where it requires like all of the permissions on your phone. Every other app I've ever looked at, they're like, hey, can we just record you all night? And it's like, no app. I don't want to run an open microphone all night while I'm sleeping. Not going to happen. So Auto Sleep, I think, is very complicated, but it's the only app that I found that does this. But I would be looking for, like, if anybody knows a simpler one that can do the same thing, that would be great.
I'm not recommending something for you, but I use Sleep Plus Plus for tracking my sleep data. Like, I'm not so interested in something that's going to wake me or anything like that, but I wear my watch when I sleep tracking just to see how I have slept. And I really like the way that Sleep Plus Plus interprets this information, and the readiness scores that I get can help me kind of understand like how prepared am I for the day. So I use Sleep Plus Plus for that, but I'm not looking for anything more complicated. In fact, I've always been put off by Auto Sleep's complication.
Yeah.
That application is way too much for me, and I like Sleep Plus Plus in its clarity and simplicity.
It's interesting that you mentioned that, though, because the last thing, I feel like this straddles the line between state of the apps and state of the hardware, but I'll mention it because it's had a huge impact, is I have a Whoop now, and I'm running the Whoop app for exactly that thing, which is the readiness score. And for years, I have complained about the Apple Health stuff, and I still feel that they do this, where Apple Health never has an opinion on anything, and it's so frustrating. Even all the new health stuff that they've added in, you realize very quickly, like, it doesn't have an opinion on anything. It just states something, and you have no idea, like, is that good? Is that bad? Oh, I've been above my average training load for the past 3 days. Is that good? Or, like, Apple Watch has no idea.
Yeah, I mean, like, for me, I've been below mine, and I don't know why.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I don't have anything that's changed, so why my below now, like I'm very confused by it, to be honest. The training load thing I thought was going to be cool. I don't understand what's happening.
But still, the whole point with the Apple one to me is all they will ever say is something like, oh, you've been under for 4 days in a row. If you're under for too long, you can start to have negative health consequences. And it's like, oh, that's cool, Apple. How long is too long? So what I like is that the Whoop is very opinionated. It just explicitly tells you you're doing too little, you're doing too much. This is the optimal amount. And they also do the thing that I feel like it is almost criminally negligent that Apple doesn't do, which is they straight up make correlations with your sleep from all of your health data. So Whoop will just like suck in all of the health data and then tell you this affects your sleep. Here's how much. Like when you do this, you sleep this much better. When you do this, you sleep this much worse, which is like Apple knows this information and it drives me crazy they don't do it. But so I've been using the Whoop, and I will say right after the Fitbod, it has got to be the second most impactful app in a sense that I have used simply for its sleep tracking and meaningful, actionable recommendations about what you should do, or just telling you days that you should take it easy and why. Very, very surprised how good data-based recommendations can really be when you listen to them.
Are you wearing it on your wrist?
No. Intolerable. Okay. I tried to put it on my wrist and I hated it. I hated it so much. I don't know. It was just absolutely awful. I also think it looks kind of dorky to be wearing two, like a watch and a thing on a wrist.
Yeah, I was wondering if you were wearing it and the Apple Watch. So you're still wearing an Apple Watch and then you're wearing it in one of the... I just found the hundreds of ways in which you can wear a Whoop band. Like they have like a million items.
Don't make me roll my eyes because they really like to oversell that. The only actual practical alternative is that they sell a bicep band.
Okay.
It's not the bicep sleeve for anyone listening, but the bicep band is what you want. If you don't want to wear it on your wrist, that is the only other real option. If you don't want to do like all the weird things, like, do you want to go all in on Whoop underwear? It's like, no, I really don't.
Yeah, that's what I saw. And I was like, that's an interesting... I don't know if I want to change my underwear.
Yeah, I don't want to change my underwear for a health tracker. Yeah. And I don't want my underwear to say Whoop in big letters. It's like, no, thank you. But this is what I will say. It is a testament to how actionable and how useful its recommendations are that I am willing to add another wearable into my life. Right, That is a very high bar, and it's really hitting it. And so then the last thing I'm just going to include in health, which is not exactly a health app, but it's the way that I used it. It's an app called Charty, and Charty's main goal is a app that works with shortcuts to create charts. And I feel like this is one of those apps that I've been looking for years and didn't know it, because I was able to use this year to create a bunch of charts to track and display health markers I cared about in exactly the way that I want to see them without having to go into a bunch of apps to check a bunch of things. So Charty was just hugely useful this year in making sure, am I staying on track with like all of these different targets and being able to see the data in exactly the way that I want to see it, not the way that each of the individual apps wants to see it. So
how is the information getting in?
So you have to write a shortcut to get the information into Charty. So it's not a simple app. Like you have to be pretty good with shortcuts to be able to use Charty. But I also feel like anyone listening who is pretty good with shortcuts, you should totally check out Charty because you will immediately find 100 things that you want to do with it. For me, the use case was particularly health, where I've had a lot of those frustrations with the Apple stuff. And like all of these apps want to be their own walled garden, but Charty was the way I could say like, no. Pull from this database and just create 4 charts. Right. And on those 4 charts, I want 4 lines each that are showing the exact things. And I can just see in one spot everything exactly the way I want to see it.
But with this shortcut that you've built, there is an element of automatic stuff going on. You're not like manually entering a piece of data.
No. I'm not manually entering anything. So it's pulling my weight. It's pulling data from the blood glucose monitor. It's pulling from like the VO2 max that Apple's measuring, all that kind of stuff, and then throwing them into charts in the way that I want to see them.
Because I guess it's all in HealthKit, isn't it? So it's good combo.
That's my rule. It's like anything that I'm using, it has to work with HealthKit because then I can get it to work with Charty and see it the way I want. All right, and that's the end of health for me. Boom, done.
Lightning round.
Oh, is it lightning round time already?
It's lightning round time. But don't forget, Greg, we haven't done home screens yet. All right, so don't say already. All right, we're not there yet.
Home screens are going to be real fast.
I'm going to start the lightning round with the most boring lightning round pick ever, but it is an app that I value for one very specific thing. Adobe Acrobat.
Wow. That's like recommending Microsoft Windows.
Yep.
Okay.
Adobe Acrobat.
Please tell me more about Adobe Acrobat.
So we make paper products at Cortex brand. And what I want to be able to do sometimes is print off a page layout in the exact size that it has been designed in. That is harder than you might think.
It doesn't seem like it should be hard.
Lots of applications want to scale the artwork or whatever to fit the page size that is coming from the printer. Look, I'm sure there's a way to do this with Apple's Preview app. I have tried many ways and couldn't do it. But with Adobe Acrobat, I can open a file and I can print it in the exact size that I need, and it makes my life so much easier. I already subscribe to Creative Cloud for Adobe Audition and Photoshop, so I get Acrobat, and it saves my bacon. It's very easy and clear to understand how to get it to do what I'm looking for, where I'm sure other apps do this, but I can't understand how to get them to do it. But Adobe Acrobat labels all their printing stuff very simply, of just saying this will be an actual size or it can be scaled size, and they have lots of functions and lots of options for print preferences. So Adobe Acrobat is my first one.
Wow, it's amazing how two words can have such a feel.
If anything, I was just really excited to pick something so boring. Like, I've really been looking forward to saying my first lightning round pick in State of the Apps 2025 is Adobe Acrobat. Great.
I'm happy you're happy.
One and only pick. No, I got lots more.
Okay, I'm going to recommend an app called Power Photos. This is for the Mac. I got a bigger iPhone hard drive this year because I want to do the thing that you do, which is I thought I want my whole photo library on my phone. It's annoying to have your phone do the thing where it downloads photos. So I was like, great, I'm just going to upgrade the size and I'm going to get a new phone. And I went to download everything and I realized that my iPhoto library was ginormous in a way that I did not know. And I thought, what the heck is taking up all this space? And it turns out in photos, you cannot sort by size of item. And so Power Photos is a utility that lets you sort your photo library by hard drive size of item. And so what that allowed me to do was discover, oh, these are the videos that I accidentally shot in RAW. Here's a bunch of photos where I didn't realize they were in RAW. Or here's a hugely long screen recording I had done for a video that didn't need to be in photos.
Here's a 24-hour video of me driving through the desert or whatever nonsense. Yeah.
I found several videos that were hundreds of gigabytes in size. And it was right. Deleting one of these is the equivalent of deleting 10 billion photos. So Power Photos lets you figure out what's taking up all the space in your photo library and sort from there.
We live in a world of fractured social media. That's where we are today. There are multiple services.
Okay.
And if you are a professional who posts things like your work or whatever on social media, these days, cross-posting from one to the other service can take forever. I am now using an app called Croissant. But it's cross-posting croissant. That's the pun of the app, I think, which enables me to be able to post to multiple services at the same time. For me, namely these days, is Mastodon and Threads. This was incredibly helpful during the St. Jude Podcastathon, where I was posting things that we were doing and updates for the event over the 12 hours without needing to post once and post in the other place. I could just post them all with media from this one application. I can post from multiple accounts too. So, if I want to post to the Cortex brand Threads account, I can do that without needing to open Threads and log into the different service. So if you manage multiple accounts on the same services, or you manage multiple accounts on different services, or if you just want to be able to post to the services it supports without seeing your timeline, Croissant is the app for you.
All right. I'm going to do two little Safari extensions that I like. The first one is called Focus. This is an extension for YouTube that allows you to, I originally got it just to be able to block shorts, but it has a bunch of good options for ability to block just things that you find annoying on YouTube. It can hide the recommendation videos. It can change the way that your home screen looks. Just a couple of these little tweaks where this is the kind of thing, once you hide it and then you completely forget that this isn't the way YouTube looks until you use someone else's computer and you're like, it's horrible. So Focus makes YouTube much nicer. And then I'll just mention Dark Reader is the best dark mode extension for Safari by a mile. I realize I've been using it for years and I don't think I've ever mentioned it, but it's just really good at being able to turn absolutely every web page dark, and has like very quick settings for the whitelist stuff and different options of methods to try if something isn't working. So Focus and Dark Reader are two Safari extensions I really like.
Bună grei, ce mai faci?
Chi, Yomatadagolo.
I don't know what language you're speaking. I'm speaking Romanian because my pick is Duolingo. I've finally given in to something I should have done a long time ago. My wife was born in Romania. I'm learning Romanian. I'm learning it very slowly because it's Duolingo, but I'm picking it up, I'm picking up animals and colors and numbers and basic things. And I've been pretty happy. I'm on like a 300-day streak now. Duolingo is just great. Like, it's just a great app. It's a great way to learn a language. In fairness to myself, the Romanian course is only a couple of years old. I tried it when it first came out and it was not very good. Like, it wasn't a very advanced course. But over the years, they have enhanced it and made it closer to some of their other courses. My brother's learning French, and honestly, it's hilarious. It's like he uses a different application. Like, the amount of things that are like different features that in the languages where they put a lot more effort into is very funny. But for me, it's good, and I'm working my way through it, and I'm picking up some words, and I'm remembering some words, and I'm really surprised over this time period where sometimes I feel like nothing is going in. Mm-hmm. But I can look at a sentence and translate it. You know what I mean? Like, on a day-to-day basis, I don't really know how much I'm learning, but over the aggregate of this time, I am learning another language. They're very good at doing what they do. And I never expect to be even conversational by doing this, but I'm at least picking up stuff, and I think that's a good thing.
Oh, I'm going to look forward to Cortex 50% Romanian edition.
Duh!
Apple's introduced their window management system this year for macOS, and I feel like if you have basic needs, that's perfectly great. I just want to recommend Mosaic. This is something that I use instead to manage my windows, and it's, again, one of those apps I just kind of forget that it isn't directly built into the system, like arbitrary placement of all windows. But I really recommend, if you've never used one of these things, like, give Apple's system a try of like, how can I put the windows in exactly where I want them to go on my Mac? But if you feel like you want more than 4 spaces, Mosaic is just really good. It's one of these very, very flexible window placement systems, and it makes me feel like an incredible computer user just to be able to like open up a bunch of stuff and boom, 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 fit like 3 windows exactly pixel perfect where I want them on the screen. I love doing a kind of like 2/3 of the screen and then divide the remaining third of the screen into, again, a 2/3 and 1/3 section. When you get into the habit of using the computer like that, it's just a really, really big productivity bonus. So I'm going to recommend Mosaic as a window manager.
I'm going to recommend Widgetsmith, which I think I might do every year because it just continues to get more and more functionality. This year, Apple added the ability for apps to be able to put things in Control Center. So you can customize your Control Center layout. And Widgetsmith has done a good job of adding a bunch of functions into their shortcuts to get into different apps and also to use tools inside of Widgetsmith. So you can have some customization there, which I really like, as well as then being able to add those same actions to a widget that can go on your home screen, which is also really cool. So being able to put those in both places. And also with this, they've added a bunch more themes and options to essentially replace the icons on your home screen with icons that you can use from the app or that you can get from like icon packs online. So if you really want to go full into absolute home screen customization, you can check out these new things in Widgetsmith. They've done some great work over there.
It's like a silly one, but I realized once I put it in Control Center, I actually quite like it. Widgetsmith added a little icon for a mirror.
No, this is funny. So Widgetsmith is made by our friend David Smith, and
Yeah.
I had lunch with Dave a couple of weeks ago, and asked him how it goes, and he goes, the mirror has been so popular.
Oh, really? That's interesting. Mm-hmm.
And so as you started talking about it, I knew you were going to say mirror.
Like, here's the dumb thing, right? I have a selfie camera that I can get to very fast. There's something psychologically different about the little mirror button that makes me actually use it sometimes in a way that I would never use the selfie camera. I don't know what it is, but that's amazing to hear from Underscore that it's been really popular because I felt drawn to it immediately. I was like, ooh, let me put this in Control Center. All right, well, then I guess I'll recommend, I have another mirror-related recommendation for the lightning round. I was going to recommend Hand Mirror for when you don't have your Apple Vision Pro do a call with just Myke and you're doing a regular FaceTime or Zoom call. Hand Mirror is just a little menu bar app that basically just does exactly what Underscore's mirror does.
Yep.
It just turns on the FaceTime camera for a second, lets you check the placement of the computer, just see how things look, make sure you have stuff in or out of frame that you want to have in or out of frame. It's always kind of amazing to me when I open up FaceTime and realize you can't actually see what the other person will see. And so that's when I pop open Hand Mirror just to double check.
That is a menu bar app, right? And I will now recommend a menu bar app, iStat Menus. iStat Menus has been around forever, and it gives you the ability to get a bunch of information about what your system is doing, along with other things. I use it to mostly monitor web traffic for uploading large files to Dropbox to make sure they're actually uploading, because the Dropbox app over time has become less reliable at letting me know if something is actually uploading or not.
Yeah.
And with iStat Menus, I can see my up and down speed for my internet. And so I can see, like, is anything actually uploading to Dropbox and at what speed is it doing so?
Next, I'm going to recommend Overlap. This is just a simple little utility app. It is another one of these time zone comparer apps. It just looks really nice. It's very simple. And it does a nice thing, though, which is it allows you to set the available known times for another city differently. And so when you're dragging the time bar back and forth, trying to see when everyone lines up, if you know, right, you're trying to have a call with someone in Cairo and you know, like they're just generally available at these times, you can set that in the app and try to like overlap when are 2 or 3 or 4 different time zones best for everybody. So just a little utility. I really like it, and it's quite pretty.
It's so weird that it is made by the Moleskine people.
I don't even quite know why that's strange, but it does feel like, why did the Moleskine company decide to make an app?
They make a few apps.
But they're notebook apps, the other apps, right? I just don't know why they make
No,
overlap.
so some of them are, but not entirely.
Oh, are they not?
Like some of them are like digital tools for drawing, right? Or digital tools for journaling. They make a calendar app called Time Page too.
Mm-hmm.
Very interesting that they did that. But I'm going to pick a weird one. It's not really an app. It's an Apple Watch face.
The state of the apps, Myke? It's not a state of the watch face?
Look, I picked Adobe Acrobat, all right?
You get a free pick because
yes,
of that?
the Apple
Okay.
Watch Photos face is incredibly good. So this is a new thing for WatchOS 11. It's building on the technology that they built for the lock screen, like the Photo Shuffle lock screen.
Mm-hmm.
So you can say, like, give me photos of select people that you have in your photos library, and you can also choose pets, so you can choose nature or cities. And every day it loads a new selection of photos, and every time you look at your watch face, it's to a new photo. And using advanced machine learning, it like lays out the clock into a readable space, but also does that thing where it might hide some of the time behind an image. You know, like it might hide it behind a mountain or whatever. This watch face is incredible. It makes me feel differently about my Apple Watch, because it makes me, when every time I look at my Apple Watch, it's something nice to look at, like a little memory or a picture of my wife or a picture of a building or a picture of the ocean or something. This is now the only watch face that I use.
Oh, really? Huh.
Yeah, and it has 2 complications. I have a weather complication and a calendar complication, because it's just a little bit of joy in my day every day. Like, seriously, I absolutely love this watch face, and I'm advocating for everybody to try it. Like, this is something I never thought that I would want to have, like a photo on my Apple Watch. But this is, to me, just a nice thing to look at every time, which makes me feel more like it's a watch in a way. Because what
Mhm.
I've always liked about watches is they look nice, but I've never really been happy with the design of Apple's watch faces. And this is like, well, you know what? If I decided to take a photo of something, I'd probably like to look at it. So let me look at my photos. It's really incredible. I recommend everybody give it a go.
All right, I'm going to recommend what is barely an app. It's a teeny tiny utility created by Marco that I know he's completely forgotten about, but I still love it. And it's his little utility called Quitter. And it's just a menu bar tool, and all it does is you can tell it when to quit an app or to, more importantly, hide an app after a certain amount of time. I really, really love and recommend this as a utility, as a way to kind of gently reset your computer slowly at a cadence that you like. So I basically have a rule for every single app on my Mac of like when this should either be closed or hidden, so that when I return to the computer, I feel like I'm kind of always coming back to a fresh computer, or a computer that has like gently readjusted itself back into what I should be doing at that point in time. So Quitter.
My final recommendation in the lightning round is an app called ShareShot. What it does is you can take a screenshot of a device and you can run it through this app. They have a bunch of shortcut actions and you can frame it inside of the device that it is, right? So you can make it look like an iPhone, look like an Apple Watch, look like a Mac. And it also has a bunch of options to be able to change the way the backgrounds look and stuff like that. So every image for the home screens that we're going to be sharing in this episode are framed using ShareShot this year.
Very nice. And so for my last lightning round recommendation, I'm going to drop this pretense, this charade that I've been doing every year where I'm like, I don't have an app of the year, but if I were to have an app of the year, it's this.
Finally.
Right? And the reason I'm doing it is because this little lightning round recommendation really is my app of the year. I cannot even pretend. It is called Logger. And a lot of things I have mentioned today like relate to automation, and I've mentioned shortcuts a lot, and it is entirely because of this app, Logger. It allows you to put in basically system messages to yourself about what a shortcut is doing, instead of having to use quick look, which is what most people do when like you're trying to build a shortcut and you think, oh, something's gone wrong and I can't figure out what it is. You put in quick look to try to figure out what is happening at each step. Logger is basically an automated quick look that writes to a separate file. So you can have, like on a traditional computer, basically a terminal output of what all of your shortcuts are doing at every single one of their steps and exactly where the problem is. I cannot even begin to tell you how many more and way more complicated shortcut apps I have made this year because of Logger. It has so rapidly become one of the most critical apps on my whole system, I cannot even believe it. So if you don't use shortcuts, this is completely worthless to you. But if you make even mildly complicated shortcuts, you have to be using Logger, and it will just completely unlock your ability to be able to make much more complicated shortcuts, because you can always know exactly what's happening and exactly where things are going wrong. So Logger is my app of the year.
This episode of Cortex is brought to you by Fitbod. When you're looking to change your fitness level, it's hard to know where to get started, and that is why I want to let you know that Fitbod is both an easy and affordable way to build a fitness plan just for you. Everybody has their own path when it comes to personal fitness. That's why Fitbod uses data to make sure they customize things to suit you perfectly, adapting as you improve, so every workout will be challenging, pushing you to make the progress that you want. You'll see superior results when a workout program is tailored to you exactly, matching your body, your experience, your environment, and goals. Fitbod stores this information in your Fitbod gym profile, where it tracks your muscle recovery, making sure that you avoid burnout and keep up your momentum. And it builds your best possible workout with the use of exercise science. They have analyzed billions of data points that have been fine-tuned by Fitbod's certified personal trainers. And you can make sure you're going to be learning new movements the right way thanks to the more than 1,000 demonstration videos that are all within the Fitbod app. This is my favorite feature of Fitbod, that when I get shown a new exercise, I have a perfect way to be able to understand how to do it because of all the videos that they can show me from different angles along with the instructions, and it makes me feel confident about the work that I'm going to be doing. Muscles improve when they're working in concert with the entire musculoskeletal system, so overworking some muscles while underworking others can negatively impact your overall results. This is why Fitbod tracks muscle fatigue and recovery to design a well-balanced workout routine, which also means you'll never get bored as the app mixes up your workouts with new exercises, rep schemes, supersets, and circuits. The Fitbod app is super easy to use, and it integrates with your Apple Watch, Wear OS smartwatch, and apps like Strava, Fitbit, and Apple Health. You've already heard in this episode why Gray loves Fitbod, and Gray loving Fitbod is the reason why they became a sponsor of the show. So you should go and check it out for yourself. You'll be able to benefit from all of the incredible work from Fitbod to help you in your fitness journey. Personalized training of this quality can be expensive, but Fitbod is just $12.99 a month or $79.99 a year, but you can get 25% off your membership by signing up today at fitbod.me/cortex. So go now and get your customized fitness plan at fitbod.me/cortex. Once again, that is fitbod.me/cortex, and you'll get 25% off your membership. A thanks to Fitbod for their continued support of this show and Relay. We've made it to home screens.
Oh, home screens. Right. How complicated can it be?
So as like last time, my home screens are broken down into a selection of focus modes too. They go together. So we will start off with what I call my standard or my regular home screen, which pops up in a couple of different places. So this is the same home screen for no focus mode or for do not disturb. I just have the same ones here. So
Myke, you just hurt me so much with these.
What were you
things.
expecting? It's not going to be different, all right? Like, it's going to look the way it's going to look, and that is how it's looked, okay?
You got to make it look different.
No.
How is it? It all looks the same.
Yes.
It's like...
It is pretty close to the same as has been previous years.
I just feel like I've just opened up a Notion page with like 40 identical screenshots on it.
Don't look down yet. No, you're just looking at the top one. No spoilers.
No, but I had to see if anything was different. It's all
look, my home screen background is the same one. It will always be the same one. I like it like that. It makes me happy. What changes is the apps and widgets. I don't need a different image to tell me that I'm in a different focus mode. I don't need to be told that I'm in a different focus mode. The context in my life suggests the focus mode has changed, right? It's like, I know when I'm recording. My phone doesn't need to tell me that. I know when it's the weekend. The home screen of my phone does not need to tell me that. The same for when I'm traveling or when I'm on vacation. No, because I know based on where I am what I'm doing. I don't need a picture to tell me this. And if anything, the apps will tell me. Let's move on from the visual of the background to talk about what apps I'm using. So there is a lot of stuff that is similar here, but there is one big change on my main home screen. I no longer have the camera app on my home screen.
Oh, on the action. Oh, yeah, right.
I've replaced it with photos now because I have a whole button on my iPhone for the camera now. There is no quicker access to the camera than my friend Camera Control, where no matter what I'm doing on my iPhone at any point, I can just press that button, the camera control button, and open the camera. So now I have the photos there on my home screen instead, so I can get to my photos whenever I want, instead of what I did before, which was press camera and then press the little button to go to the photo library. That's been the biggest change. Outside of that, on my main home screen, everything is the same. I have a bunch of widgets like Fantastical and Carrot and Dew and Timery, and then the general apps that I use. On my second page is where the most change will be, where I have my Duolingo widget there. The Duolingo widget is fantastic. It's a bit of a meme, the Duolingo widget, because if you've not done your Duolingo for the day, the widget gets increasingly unhinged.
Oh, really? Huh.
Like sometimes the bird's face is melting, or like the bird's open its mouth and there's another tiny bird coming out. Like basically what they're doing, and it's very clever. They're making it so unmissable that it is another reminder that you need to do your Duolingo.
They're doing bird body horror to catch your attention.
Essentially, it's doing that. On the top left, I have a stack of Notion widgets now to get into a bunch of my frequently used Notion.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, one thing that has changed, obviously there's no email in my doc. That's been replaced by Notion as well.
Oh,
So-
yeah. How refreshing, of course.
Notion is there as well, but I like having the two things there because the widgets help me jump quickly, and it also helps me jump quickly between like the Cortex Notion and the connected Notion for those two, so it helps you jump between those. I have a stack of Widgetsmith widget photo stuff, so it's pulling from different albums of mine and also like an On This Day widget that I really like from Widgetsmith. The very center, I have a selection of widgets. I have a widget in that stack. There's like a stack of widgets. One is Box, which is my F1 widgets, because I like to see what's going on with my F1 races, along with a Widgetsmith time zone calculator, so I can just see the different times and the different time zones that I'm working with. I have a new time zone there, which is Adelaide, Australia, because the guys that we're working with, some of the branding stuff at Cortex Brand, are in Adelaide.
Oh, of course. Right. Yeah, of course.
So that's a new one for me, which is the most complicated because it's a different day. It's always very complicated for me to work that out, so I'm happy to have that.
Oh, boo. Right, of course. Yeah.
It's very confusing. Also in that stack are I have a couple of countdown widgets for Widgetsmith. So like it will show me a photo like of my next vacation destination, and I can tap it and it slides up and shows me how many days that's going to be. And then my final page, this is new. So I had a bunch of widgets that I consolidated recently. There was some stuff that I had that like I didn't really need anymore. But the widgets I wanted to keep were my game track widgets, which I mentioned earlier. So there's a stack of game track
that's
widget
game
lists.
track. Okay.
So it's like the games I have in progress and the games on my wish list. So that's like a stack of widgets that moves through. And then I have basically had that widget on its own, essentially, on the page. And I was like, I needed to mix some stuff up. So I've been using an app for a number of years now called Peak, which does some really nice fitness widgets. And I was using a small square one, but I've made a medium one with a bunch of different elements in there. So I can see my activity rings, my steps, how many hours I slept, and my workout information for the day. And then I've kind of I'm not sure what else to do, so I'm playing around with a couple. One is the Vitals widget from Apple Health, which I do actually think I like. This is something where it's like, oh, they are actually giving me some information, which is good. Yeah. I actually quite like the Vitals feature, and I think the widget looks visually nice.
I actually agree. That is the useful thing. That is the only place where they sort of have an opinion.
Yep.
But it is useful to say, these two are out of whack based on the last 28 days. So yeah, I use that too. That is good.
I had this in a stack with the training load widget, but as I mentioned earlier in the show, I don't really think I like the training load feature, so I removed that one. But I'm keeping the Health Vitals one for now. Next to it is the Apple Books, Apple Books widget, which is obviously a weird one for me.
Please tell me more.
I'm reading a book right now that I can't talk about yet.
Oh, okay.
But
fair enough.
I will explain more later about what this book is. But this is serving as a reminder for me to continue reading that book, because it is obviously not normal for me to think about reading a book. So at the moment, I like a visual reminder to remind me to keep knocking my way through this book.
Mm-hmm.
So this is my regular home screen all done. And I mentioned earlier, my watch face now is just the Photos watch face. And I've included an image here where you can get an idea for this watch face. So there's a picture of Adina on vacation, and it's put the time next to her. And I've got my complications.
Looks really good.
It's really fun. Really, really fun. I then have my recording home screens, which are essentially the same. It's the same. It just changes the lock screen to a photo shuffle, and also changes my complications on my lock screen widget. So on my main one, I have Carrot, and I have a step counter and timery. And then on the recording home screen, the recording lock screen, I have timery to show me my current timer, because it was, it's related to what I'm recording. And then also the time zones of my co-hosts. So that's helpful for that. If we move on to weekend, not a lot of visual change, obviously, as you know, but there's less screens here, so I kind of condensed it down a little bit. I had the Sonos one on there because I would listen to more music on my Sonos system at home on the weekend, and it's really just about condensing stuff. On the due one, if I scroll through that, it goes to reminders widget, right? Because that's when I will do most of my family-related tasks will be on the weekend. I'll be doing those there. But then we move over and it's just Duolingo, Peak, and Widgetsmith and Game Track again. I have a sleep home screen, which has just a bunch of things that I might want to specifically do at night. So I have like a home widget there, which will turn off the bedroom lights, as well as apps that I might want for content like Audible for audiobooks or YouTube for YouTube videos, and also clock because, got to put my alarm on because I'm a manual alarm setter. I don't have like a daily alarm. Like I like to change my alarm based on what's happening the next day. So I set those manually. And then, again, not a lot of this is very new. Travel, I have some travel-focused stuff like Tripsy and Flighty and Find My on my home screens there because, I want to know when my next flight is and all that kind of stuff. I do still have a travel watch face, which uses the Flighty complications.
Yeah, it's great.
However, I really like the new widgets that are in watchOS 11 and the way that they surface, and also like the live activities and stuff. Like I've been liking the way that widgets work and look on watchOS 11 to the point where I don't really feel like I need as many complications anymore because I think the system is doing a much better job of showing me what I need when I need it more than I've seen before. So like when I have a flight going on, I don't really need it on my home screen because it just shows up on my watch. Like the Flighty app is surfacing the widget and showing that to me, as well as any live activities that I might have running. So I don't really need the watch face to be so specific anymore.
I feel like I tried to work with those live activities, but I just eventually just found it too frustrating.
Sure.
But this is a case where I value the consistency of the watch face, and I just, it's like running a timer or whatever. It's like, I don't like, now the timer is the thing on my watch. I feel like, no, I'd rather just have it be the same all the time.
I understand that, but I have kind of given myself into the Smart Stack system, and I have been surprised that it is a lot more of what I want when I want it.
I honestly think I could get used to it if it would just not have that clock at the top and it would instead show me two of those things.
Right.
Like I think if it would just show me two of them right from the start, I could get used to it. But the fact that it's functionally only showing me one feels like it's blocked off too much of the screen that I would use for something else and has given me nothing. It just feels like someone else's watch has appeared on my wrist. It's like, I don't want that. It's very odd.
What is weird is when you scroll to get to, you still see the time and the date. Let's start there.
Yeah, I might use it if they just started there. Yeah.
I agree with you. Yeah, I don't need the big time. Just give me the little time and give me more of the widgets rather than needing to do the scrolling all the time. And then my last one is my vacation one, which, I don't really feel like I have a lot of interesting things going on my home screens this year, to be honest. I feel like they are essentially pretty much the same as they have been in the past, which I guess is a good thing. There's some stability there.
Well, it's a bit like with state of the apps in general, right? The thing that should happen as we do this for years is it shouldn't be every year everything changes, right? Because that's just wild, right?
True.
If everything's changing every year, it means you're wasting an enormous amount of time on transition costs. That's what that would mean.
Well, I do feel like I've had pretty big changes to some of the categories, but essentially the home screens have remained pretty stable for me. So like, like I've had stuff like my email stuff has changed, and that's massive, but that only changes one icon on my home screen.
Right.
But like it's a huge system change for me. Or like using Notion. But again, it's like I'd started using Notion last year, but now I'm way deeper into it. And a lot of these other tools, like the AI tools or whatever, they're not home screen worthy.
Right, of course.
These are like functional things that I'm using when I need them, but they're not daily basis type stuff, So that's my home screens.
Okay. I'm going to send you something. It might need a little bit of explanation.
Oh, they've got like a flowchart now?
Okay, so I made a flowchart, basically.
You actually did make a flowchart.
It's not a proper flowchart. This was the simple. I had a worse version, and I realized I could condense it down.
Okay,
so let me explain high level what I've been thinking about, right?
I think there is some high level thinking to occur here, that's for sure.
So focus modes are great, but I was trying to solve some frustrations I've had with focus modes, then like the way the phone looks and works this year that I feel like I finally solved. But so one of the frustrations is, it's like, if I'm exercising, is the easy example. There's two different modes in which I'm exercising. And one of those modes is like, it is the morning. This is part of my morning work routine. And I'm using exercise as a break, and I'm going to go back to work. And so that is what I think of as like, I'm exercising in a closed mode. I don't want to be interrupted by anyone. This is just like functionally it's a break. But other times, if I'm like in the afternoon and I'm exercising, that's an open mode where, if someone wants to call me, this is actually a perfect time. Or if I get a text message from someone, it's a time that it's okay to get those kinds of things or interruptions because I'm not working, I'm available in some sense. But in both of those scenarios, the same thing is happening. I'm focusing on my health, I'm doing exercise stuff. And so I would want my phone to look the same. But there's no way in Apple to separate what do you want to have happen with notifications from the focus modes, which I feel like is just a thing I had not correctly internalized. Like you can't, through shortcuts, change anything about the way notifications reach you. You can only do that through focus modes, which is intrinsically tied to how does the phone look. So what I did was I thought about, okay, what are the main different times in my day? What are the main different kinds of things that I'm doing and the ways that I want my phone to look? Which of these scenarios are closed? I don't want anyone to reach me. Which of these scenarios are open? It's perfectly fine to be getting notifications. And which of these scenarios have two different versions of this, like exercise? Sometimes it's closed, sometimes it's open. And so I divvied up my day and then from there worked to make all of the different focus modes that I would need.
I've just realized now there are so many focus modes.
So I have tricked Apple's system into giving me more focus modes than it should because the limit is 10, but I've squeezed out 12 because you can fill it up with focus modes and then you can get an 11th if after you fill up your focus mode list, you go into the sleep app and tell it you want to use sleep. It'll then create an 11th focus mode, which you're otherwise not allowed to have. And with this new system, when they introduced the reduce interruptions focus mode, they added that onto my list. And so I got a 12th. So I have 12 focus modes, which turns out to be exactly the number I needed. I can't have one less.
Wow. Lucky you.
So what you're looking at here is a chart of each row is a focus mode. And my feeling here is like, the way I want my phone to be is I want my phone to look different in each scenario. So it's obviously like it's a visual cue about like, what am I doing? What's going on? What's happening? And also, I just don't ever want more than one page on my phone. I want the lock screen and I want one home screen and that's it. I never want to swipe back and forth between anything else. So I just went through my phone and created every single focus mode. I created one phone home screen to go with it, one watch screen to go with it. And then if you look at the open and closed box in the middle, I just have two lock screens there because some of the lock screens are ever so slightly different for the different focus modes. But I genuinely think it is really not quite worth like going through every one of these screens. Like it's just kind of insanity.
Sure. There's a lot of similarities between them.
But that's exactly it. Like because they're supposed to be similar. So I actually feel like this year it's not about the screens in a sense. It's about how did I think of dividing up my day? It's like, what are the different modes you're in? It's like, there's sleep, totally closed mode, Mars, right? Red background there, have sleep-related apps. I've got the core work, which is my blue. That's, again, closed. I don't want anyone to interrupt me. I just have OmniFocus there, and I've got my time tracker there. And you can see I have my watch face that now shows, like, here's the 2 items that I can see from OmniFocus of what I'm supposed to do. And then I have Do Not Disturb is one of the default focus modes. And that's what I use for recording.
Okay.
That is the true no interruptions focus mode. Like, no app, no calls, not under any circumstances. Do Not Disturb is the only one that's like absolutely nothing will interrupt me while that's happening. So I use that for recording podcasts. And then I have a mode that I call transition, or I call it loading, because this is where I'm using my timers of like, what am I doing during the day? And I always feel like, the danger zones are when you're between doing two tasks. And so I did like to just set up my watch looks different. So it's a kind of visual reminder, like you're in between two different tasks. You're in the transition time now. Like you should be looking at your task list and figuring out what you're going to do next. So that's why OmniFocus is on my watch when there's the transition mode. But this is the one that was actually key for why I decided to set up the system, because I go into this loading transition mode all the time, like basically after every single task. It's the kind of thing when I'm taking a break, that's transition mode. But I take breaks in the afternoon and I take breaks in the morning. And so I created these two identical looking modes, because when I flip the break timer in the morning and my break focus mode turns on, I don't want at that moment to get like a text message from someone because I'm still working. But then in the afternoon, the behavior is different. Like I flip on the loading timer or the break timer, and then the open version of the transition focus mode comes on, and then people can message me while that's happening, or I can get a notification that like an important email came in or whatever. Basically near identical to that, but slightly different, is driving. I feel like driving is the same kind of thing. It is a transition time. You're not where you were, you're not where you're going, you're in between. And it has the exact same problem. If I'm driving in the morning, I'm still in work mode. I don't want anyone to get in touch with me. But if I'm driving in the afternoon, I do want people to get in touch with me. So I made the same thing, open closed versions of driving. And then I've got a bunch of driving related apps on my one home screen there. Health I already talked about. And then the last three are the like pure open modes where they're just open all the time. And that is like, it's the weekend, I'm traveling, or there's a mode that I just call open, which is I'm intentionally turning on the phone so that like anyone can reach me.
Come get me, world.
Yeah. And that is the only one where there's a shortcut that watches for when do I go into the pure open mode. And the only setting that you can change with shortcuts is the will an unknown caller ring the phone setting. So if I go into the pure open mode, that's the only time I can get a call from an unknown number, which is very useful to do, right? Like, you know, you're going to get a call from the handyman, but the handyman isn't in your contact book or whatever.
Oh, that's pretty clever.
That's what I use the open mode for. It's like, I leave the phone in this mode, and now I know I'm waiting for a call, but I don't know what the number is. Or like I've called the bank because there's some problem and they're going to get back to me. Put it in open mode. Then I get calls from unknown callers. Otherwise, it's like just people in my contact book who can contact me and message me. So that's the system. That's what my focus modes, home screens look like. And complicated image will be in the show notes for the listeners.
Yeah, I have a few questions.
Oh, do you? Okay.
In the closed sleep home screen, is that the Whoop morning energy fade relax? Is that like a Whoop thing? What is that widget?
Oh, no. It's something I did mention in Lightning Round. It's an app called Endel, which I like. It's one of
Music
these
ones?
like music ones.
Yeah.
I think it's really good. They're trying to do a thing which is a kind of autoplay where you can listen to it just continuously, and it kind of tries to guess how to vary the intensity of the music over the course of the day.
Okay.
I think they actually do a really good job. But the reason I have the widget there is because you can also use it as a kind of alarm clock, which is something I was trialing. And I do think is pretty good, where play music is not correct, but like it's making white noise in a way overnight. And then it slowly modifies the sound of that white noise to try to wake you up at a certain time. So the widget's just a fast way to get to that app to set a different time for the alarm.
In your core, which is the main working one, right? In the closed area, the big widget you have in the middle, what is that?
That's timelines. That's my time tracker.
Okay, that's a widget for timelines. It looks pretty nice, that widget.
Yeah, that's why I say I like it. They display the data in like interesting and pleasing ways. So that's kind of why I've kept it there. But that's the only time I kind of want a little real tracker of like, what have I done today when I'm in the core mode? So it is actually quite motivating to make sure like, oh, in the first half of the day, that pie chart should look good. It shouldn't be filled up with a bunch of dumb time.
A few of your watch faces, they have the focus mode indicator, which we both said we don't like. Just wish they wouldn't do.
So
but some of them are set on the right. They're not in the middle. What is going on there?
The reason it's set on the right is because that's the ultra watch face, right? And there's supposed to be space for 3 circles on the top, but I've just disabled all of them. So the only place they can put it is on the right, and it just looks awful.
Oh, okay. My word.
Right? It's the same face as the ultra watch, right? but they don't have space for it, so it goes on the side. I hate it.
I've not used that watch face. Whatever watch face that is, it's doing that. I've not used that. That's really weird that it's doing that. Gross.
You can see it again on the sleep watch. It's the same thing at the top, right? It's just I have a complication that's in the middle, so you can see that the little bed is off center.
Yeah.
It's wild to me that it does it sometimes. I hate it. But again, we've complained endlessly. Like the fact that that indicator is there is just so ugly and so unnecessary. I hate it. I hate it. Hate it. Hate it. Apple, please get rid of it.
What do these shortcuts do in your dock? You got a little teacher's cap, business cards, and a baseball cap. What are they doing?
Okay, so the one in the middle, the index cards, that's my input into my to-do system. So that I press, asks me for a task, then it asks me what kind of task it is, and it filters everywhere appropriately. Okay, so the other two, the graduate cap, that is a shortcut to get me to Claude. And the baseball cap for a little boy who doesn't know as much as someone who went to university is to get me to ChatGPT.
Oh, man, that's good. I like that a lot.
It's one of these funny things. I kind of realized, like, oh, these are the apps I'm hitting almost all the time. Like, they just deserve to be in the dock, right? I never know when it is I'm going to use them. The only minor thing is I kind of wish I could get rid of them for the core, because I do have this rule for myself of like, just don't use any AI basically before noon.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like it's bad for the thinking process, but I wouldn't really do it on my phone. Like I'm mostly working on my computer in that mode anyway. So I don't mind that, but I realize basically every other time, the number of times I open my phone and the thing I want to do is ask one of these two things a question is extremely, extremely high. That's why they got promoted into the dock.
The open and closed is one thing I'm confused about. Like it's like drive open, health open, transition and reduce interruptions. So like how do they work together?
So the reason it has to be reduced interruptions is because that's the extra focus mode that I got from Apple, but I can't rename it. Okay. It has to be called reduce interruptions.
But you've set it to do different things?
What reduce interruptions should be is really transition open. That's what I would want to name it if I could. But I just can't because they won't let you rename it. And if I delete it, then I'll just lose that extra focus mode and I'll be down to 11.
So the transition one is like it's when you're moving from task to task, but in the regular transition, it's nothing's going to come through.
Nothing's going to interrupt me, yeah.
But then reduce interruptions, you're letting Apple Intelligence decide what's important to alert you.
That's exactly right, yeah.
Okay. So, that makes sense.
And again, basically that's most of the time I'm taking a break, right? I'm getting up and like we discussed before, I've been doing some writing. I'm going to take a break. I'm doing some mindless tidying of the house maybe for 10 minutes. But what I don't want is to get a phone call then, because really I'm just giving my brain a break and then I'm going to go right back. But then if I'm doing the same thing, if I'm working in the afternoon and I take a little break, I have found it useful so far. Like the reduce interruptions is pretty good at like actually figuring out, oh, you want this now or you don't want this now. So that's the way that I'm using those two.
Don't think I have any more questions.
Well, I mean, Myke, I think the chart answers all the questions.
How could it not?
Have.
You know, answers some, asks some more, but then also answers them, you know?
I mean, I'm sure all of our listeners will agree when they click the image in the show notes. It's entirely self-explanatory.